Well, this, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call a cold open. It's when you start a podcast without a title, just out of nowhere, just talking. It's kind of unsettling, isn't it? Especially when I begin with a definition of the phrase cold open. That's very unsettling. But we're here before Dr. Dave shows up. We're not going to rig any booby traps or anything. I am Chesler Chidello, and
I'm Lachlan the Lackey, producer of this wonderful show.
That's right. And what we would like to just quickly take you through the new PEP. We have a new PEP for a new year, and we want to talk you through some of the changes that we've made. When I say we, I mean Lachlan.
No, you were monumental in telling me what New Year's resolutions that Pep had.
That's right. I told you all the things that would make me happy, and then you went and did them. So thank you very much for that. Okay, firstly, you will notice that we are no longer in the ABC.
No, we're not.
No, we're not.
We made it a whole block away.
If that. We're in the Chaser studio now. Well, actually, the Chaser storeroom. We call the studio. It's just a storeroom. There's literally Chaser props about 2 meters over there. And this will henceforth be known as Pepland. That's where we are. In Pepland.
We've carved out a little dominion for ourselves.
It's beautiful.
In the storeroom.
And this means, of course, we can record any time we like, for as long as we like. You have been warned. We're not going to be recording super long, though, generally. We'll keep things between 3 and 4 hours, generally speaking, on PEP. Because while we no longer have a 3-hour limit, we do have a 1 Dave limit. And Dave's a bit too busy for the 6-hour podcast. So don't think we're going to go crazy. About 3 hours is right. It will sometimes go a bit longer, a bit shorter, whatever. It'll probably be longer more often.
This one's going to go longer.
This one is going to go longer. I'm sure of it. Well, there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
What we're going to do is, rather than having the 5-hour podcast, which we were moving towards at the end of last year.
Oh boy.
we're going to try something, unless this is a terrible idea. We're going to try splitting the pod into 2. We're going to have a standard PEP, which you're used to, and at the same time, as we send out the PEP, we're going to send out an auxiliary video, which is like an extra PEP. Now, PEP is Planet Extra podcast. So this is the Planet Extra podcast.
Whoa.
Or PEEP. There's going to be a PEEP, an extra podcast. That's right. This is going to have the Chaz Unleashed type stuff. This will have all the stuff which we didn't have time for, which we can cram in some extra content for you. And also, I'm going to start doing long interviews, long form interviews, like hour-long interviews, hour-and-a-half long interviews with people who I think deserve being interviewed. The kind of people who you wouldn't normally see on Planet America or certainly not on Australian TV. And we might also debut or try out some new peppers, some new PEP guests.
Yes.
Who don't necessarily want to do 3 hours, who might just want to do an hour and a half, and we'll get them in there. So we'll try and combine all these things, like interviews with extra content. If there's extra correspondence, we'll put it in there. So it's kind of like a supplementary podcast. That's the idea. And we don't quite sure when to release the extra. We're going to experiment. Today we'll release it at exactly the same time as the main PEP.
So if you're watching this after you've already watched PEEP,
you done bad.
Yeah, that's not the right order.
You should immediately get your mind erased and then watch it in the right order. That's what you should do. Why don't you give us a tour of the new
Yeah, let's take a little tour. Sure.
Okay.
Well, first off, and hopefully I haven't been slack in editing, but our viewers on Spotify and YouTube will already have noticed that we aren't just burdened by one camera anymore, Chaz. We have 2 and 3 little places that you can view us after months and months of complaints about Dave's face being hidden from behind pop filters. You'll be pleased to know that now you will be able to view Dave's face when he talks. I say this preemptively knowing he's probably going to get hidden behind it somehow. Somehow that is going to happen.
Probably.
We also have a whole lot of new tech perks.
We got like proper tech here so that we can now just play. Well, it's pretty much unlimited stings, isn't it?
Yes, and so we can play them all at once. And and it sounds a bit like this.
Yeah, we probably won't do that again. Sorry about that. But you get the idea. We can play lots of stings. Unlimited stings for the musicians, all called Dan, who are peppers, who want to make more stings. We can play as many stings as we want now. We won't play them simultaneously next time. Also, I've got
my own new booth.
You got a booth?
I forgot.
I'm calling it the lockbox.
Oh, I like that.
The good thing about the lockbox is that not only do you actually have a microphone, so you can actually talk to us during the podcast, but on top of that, we've got a monitor in front of us here, and you actually can Google stuff and you can
pull things up in live, which means that hopefully Chaz and Dave have a much more seamless experience in the show.
Fantastic.
Again, I say these things preemptively.
Yeah, with all this, by the way, we can stream live if we want to.
Yes. Whoa, wouldn't that be fun?
Which we couldn't do before, but now we probably can. Now, we're not going to do that anytime soon.
No.
But we have a facility.
Yeah.
So that's kind of exciting.
We do also have a brand new clips channel where we'll be posting clips and shorts from PEP episodes that you all peppers voted for, having a separate YouTube channel so that your notifications don't go off every single time we want to post a 1 minute clip from PEP.
Yep. Look, there's more, but you know what? I reckon we've probably done the world's longest cold open. So
no, that's true.
It's around now that we should probably play the opening, and then you should skedaddle, and Dr. Dave will be in here any moment, and then we're going to start PEP 193. So if you can just hold on your horses until we get past the opener, it's time to get peppy. Let's get peppy. Welcome to PEP 193. It's a new PEP, a new year. It's a new Dr. Dave. Welcome to Planet Extra Podcast. New hairstyle too. It's an offshoot of Planet America on ABC Australia, but on PEP, we're covering all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. If you listen, you can find us also on Facebook at ABC Planet America and on YouTube at the PEP with Chaz and Dr. Dave channel. You can also see highlights on the PEP Clips channel. Oh my God, we're an empire. You'll also find timestamps and show notes in our blurbs. And if you leave a comment under our current episode video, we are likely to see it. You can also tweet us or blue sky us. I don't know what the verb is for blue sky at PEPCHASDRDAVE. That's at Pep Chaz Dr. Dave. If you want to chat to some fellow peppers, you can join our Discord server. It's on the screen right now or in the blurb of the podcast. But if you want to contact me or Lockie the Lackey privately, why not email us? The address is producer@pepthepodcast.com. That address again is producer@pepthepodcast.com. And if you want to buy merch, that address is pepchazdaveshop.com. But for now, let's turn to a new man who at least so far in 2025 has not once raised the stakes on any inconsequential views. I'm talking, of course, about Dr. Dave Smith. Hey, Dave.
Hi, and I'm very glad that you have cut your hair because we were getting so many complaints from people saying they couldn't tell the difference between us.
Yeah.
Now they'll be able to. I'm Dr. David Smith. I am an associate professor at the United States Studies Center at the university. But let me, for the first but not the last time this year, clarify, I do not speak for either of those institutions. When I'm on PEP, I am only speaking for myself, and you'd better believe there are some things today that I don't want to tie to any kind of other institution or person. So it's just me and Chaz.
And me.
But we're not speaking for anybody else.
No, there's no speaking for anyone else.
Even though we are in the house that Charles Firth built, we're not speaking for Charles.
Definitely not. And we're off to a flyer, Dave. At least I am, because I did the whole intro down the wrong camera. So, but I noticed that you went down the right camera, your camera. So there you go. And who's the one who's done TV for 25 years? Anyway, what are you grateful for, Dave?
I am grateful for the snow monkeys of Nagano Prefecture.
You're going to have to tell us more.
Okay. So in a place called Shibu Onsen in Nagano Prefecture, which is about a 2 or 3 hour ride away from Tokyo by train. Mm-hmm. If you stay in this town and hike up a mountain for about an hour, you'll find this special onsen, i.e. this hot bath that is especially for the monkeys. Yeah. There are human onsens around there as well, but the monkeys have got their own onsen.
I assume the humans don't go in the monkeys' onsen?
The humans do not go in the monkeys' onsen. The humans are not allowed to go in the monkeys' onsen. It wouldn't be advisable for the humans to go in the monkeys' onsen anyway. But seeing these monkeys in their hot bath can really just restore your faith in the world. And Lockie is going to give us some video footage that I actually took of the monkeys.
Oh, my God.
See, here they are. Look, they're a superior civilization. Look at them grooming each other and, and cooperating and just enjoying this hot bath.
Are you suggesting that we don't groom each other in baths? I groom my whole family in the bath, don't you? You sound like a grot, Dave.
One of the great things about these monkeys is, even though there are rules for good reason about, don't get within a metre of the monkeys don't give a shit. They're completely indifferent to human presence. So they'll just run past you when they see someone with some food or something. And there's this kind of amphitheatre setup where they get fed that makes it look a little bit like the scene from the second Planet of the Apes movie where these ape rabble-rousers saying I'm a simple soldier and I know what every soldier knows. The only thing that counts is force. Naked, merciless force. But these monkeys aren't like that.
No, they groom.
They groom. All that counts to them is grooming.
Everything you're telling me, Dave, is convincing me more and more and more that this setup had to be in Japan, because if it was in Australia, humans definitely would have been in the onsen.
They would be getting in the onsen. They would be making complete asses of themselves. They would be disrupting the whole monkey harmony.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so you're grateful for the onsen and for the snow monkeys.
I am very grateful for both of them. Yes.
Okay. Look, I'm grateful for how generous the Peppers were at the end of last year. I don't know if any of them have come back. I hope they have, because we've just gotten into a lot of trouble for this podcast. But assuming you have, I want to tell you how grateful I am to you guys, because I got so many tips and recommendations. I spent most of my holidays replying to people, giving me advice. I think it says something about how lost I seem that so many people wanted to personally give me advice via the email. But some of that advice is really useful. Like, for instance, I don't do a lot of reading of books. It's your book list, not my book list.
Yeah.
But someone recommended, because I talked about how much of a space nerd I was and how I kind of am into that stuff. Someone suggested I read Kelly and Zach Weinersmith's book, A City on Mars, which is about the likelihood and the issues of colonizing Mars or a space station or the moon.
Yep.
Real space nerd stuff. And it was great.
What do they say? How likely is it?
They are keen on space as well. They wrote a book about it, but they think it's pretty unlikely in the near term. Landing on Mars is one thing. Colonizing Mars with 1 million people like Elon Musk wants to do in the next 20 years, well, that's another thing altogether.
Yeah. See, I read Kim Stanley Robinson's Mars trilogy, and my takeaway from that is this would be really hard.
Yes.
I think Musk might have had a different takeaway from it.
Yeah.
This would be awesome.
Look, it would be awesome. Just a question of whether it's possible.
The book doesn't make it sound that awesome, actually.
Yeah. Well, look, if you could do it without dying, then that'd be awesome. And even if you died, it'd be an awesome death. Remember the Total Recall? How when they broke the glass and people all of a sudden turned into claymation figures? That was awesome.
The main theme of the Mars trilogy is that everyone brings their conflicts from Earth with them to Mars. And then the conflicts just accelerate. But anyway.
This is a point that was also made by Kelly and Zach Weinersmith. That people don't change even when they're on Mars.
No.
Anyway, I don't want to talk about the book so much as to say it was a great book. If you're a space nerd, I recommend it. And thank you very much for that recommendation. I couldn't find the person who recommended it now, but thank you. Also, one of the many musical Dans has been making a sting for Smell the Musk, and that absolutely is going to get used. So that will get used almost every week. So thank you, Musical Dan. Musical Dan number 2, I believe. Bronwyn and Philip were sick to death of hearing about how every year I lose weight during the holidays and put it on when I work.
Yeah.
And they're trying to coach me to stay healthy this year.
Oh, that's nice of them.
It is nice of them. And what they're discovering so far is just how screwed up my lifestyle is. There is a reason for this. But so far, they're making a pretty good fist of trying to clean me up. So thank you for that, Bronwyn and Philip. Also, Neil has been a very generous pepper for a long time. He's the one who gave us these beautiful mugs, which we are never going to sell, these mugs. And he's already sent us a lovely present to celebrate our 200th PEP, which I think is the very definition of optimism because that's still 7 episodes away.
Is.
But thank you very much, Neil. So anyway, lots of peppers, lots of advice, lots of gifts. Thank you so much. I'm grateful to you all. And I'm so grateful that next week I won't just say I'm grateful for you guys again. We'll come with something new. Now, Dave.
Yes.
We have a lot to catch up on.
We do have a lot to catch up on.
We have so much to catch up on. There is no way we're going to do it in this episode, even with a peep, an extra. So this is what I propose. I propose that we split all the material up to now into 2.
Okay.
Pre-inauguration versus post-inauguration.
Okay.
Now, there is going to be one exception because there is something you personally requested.
Yes.
So let's start off with that right away, get that out of the way, then go back to pre-inauguration. That means we're going to be dealing with some old stuff, but if we don't do it now, we're never going to deal with it. I know it's stuff that you guys want us to talk about because you've requested it. So let's get into the one exception we're going to make to the inauguration line.
Yes.
And that is Elon Musk. Now, every time one of these outrage stories breaks, I've got to say, I die a little.
Yeah.
Every single time, because I know I'm going to have to talk about it on both PEP and on Planet America.
Yes, yeah.
And I know that most of you are going to disagree with my view because I always have a different view on these outrage stories. And I know I can't get away with it because no one likes to talk about things more in this modern day than sitting in judgment of other people's behaviour. People love it. It drives social media, it drives news.com.au, and it drives both my media ventures. So we do have to talk about it, but it's not going to be fun because you're all going to hate me. I don't mind my audience being angry with me if it's over something that matters, but these stories never matter, Dave. They never matter at all. They're not about some principle. They're never about something important. They're always of no consequence, and we put off stories that matter in order to waste time on these stories, blow them out of proportion, and make everyone angry at me when I genuinely couldn't give a stuff about any of these stories. So now I've delivered that qualifier. Here we go again, Dave.
I think this one actually does matter. Okay. Lockie, can we have the clip, please, which I'm sure that all of you have seen before by this point.
You know, there are elections that come and go. Some elections are, important. Some are not. But this one, this one really mattered. And I just want to say thank you for making it happen. Thank you. My heart goes out to you. It is thanks to you that the future of civilization is assured.
I'm sorry, I should have warned viewers before we played the clip because some people get very offended by these alleged Nazi salutes. On Channel 9, in fact,
yes,
it was so offensive that they literally blurred out Elon Musk's arm. I wonder what was behind the blur, Dave. Who knows? Anyway.
What is the point? Okay.
Yeah, tell
I
us about
just
it.
want to make it very clear here,
Yeah.
bearing in mind I'm speaking for myself, not for anyone else. You saw a Nazi salute. No one needs to pretend they didn't see a Nazi salute.
So that's the official position of University of
That
Sydney.
is the official position of me. Okay? Now, the way that the media has treated this has just been bizarre. Like so many headlines about Musk did what appeared to be a Nazi salute.
Sure.
Musk did what some people are calling a Nazi salute. The most weaselly was the New York Times, which said, Musk's arm gesture ignites online speculation about the meaning of a gesture. Yes, that is the official New York Times voice. It was a Nazi salute. I don't know why people – no, actually I've got a lot of theories about why people are afraid to talk about the fact that it was a Nazi salute. But I think One of the main ones, so for the outlets that are saying things like this looks like a Nazi salute or this is a gesture that resembles something resembling a Nazi salute, people are a bit worried about what the implication of that is or whether they then have to talk about why Musk was doing a Nazi salute. Okay, I've got the solution to this. You don't need to speculate on why he was doing the Nazi salute because that's pretty open-ended, which I'll talk about in a second. That doesn't change the fact that he was doing a Nazi salute. That doesn't necessarily mean he's a Nazi. When Mark Bosnich did one as the goalkeeper of Aston Villa in 1995, he claimed he was doing it because he was trolling. That wasn't the language we used back in those times. And he was riling up Jurgen Klinsmann, who was playing for Tottenham Hotspur. And Bosnich claims he sincerely didn't realise that Tottenham Hotspur is known as the Jewish club in London. You know, that doesn't make Mark Bosnich a Nazi, but it doesn't change the fact that he did a Nazi salute. Just to deal with the claims, which Musk himself, he hasn't even said what it was that he did.
No, he hasn't.
Right?
No.
Instead, because he knows he's got millions of idiots to do that work for him, right?
To be fair, Musk usually doesn't need to rely on idiots to speak for him. He's usually pretty verbose.
Yes. Yeah. So there are a lot of people saying, oh no, he was just making a "my heart goes out to you" gesture because he said "my heart goes out to you" and he had his hand on his heart.
Yeah.
There are even some pedants saying, oh, hand on heart, that's not a part of the Nazi salute.
Isn't it? But it is,
well,
isn't
it goes from the chest, maybe not starting with your hand flat on it. I don't know, but okay. I just want to ask, if you had 100 people selected at random and you asked them, make a gesture that would go with the saying, "my heart goes out to you,"
Yes.
I'm guessing none of them would incorporate a Nazi salute
Probably not.
into it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So even if it was part of a "my heart goes out to you" gesture, he used a Nazi salute as part of that gesture, which makes it even creepier because that says something about what he thinks about his audience.
And his heart.
Okay, so that was point one.
Okay.
Point two, which I think is really insidious in a way, was the whole thing, oh, he's got Asperger's, he's awkward, he has trouble controlling his limbs. No, this wasn't him dancing around on stage and accidentally flinging out an arm in a way that might have resembled a gesture. This was a very controlled gesture, which he did twice. You know, it's so that there could be no mistake, so that the people behind him could see what he's done. As I said, there is no reason to pretend that this wasn't a Nazi salute. Okay, you saw what you saw. Third defense has been, this is actually a Roman salute.
Yes, I have heard that.
Right? Now, okay, this is the one with the most substance to it.
You reckon?
It's still bullshit. Because, yes, that it is often known as the Roman salute. Apparently, there are historians who say the Roman salute didn't actually look like that, but whatever. This was the salute that was appropriated from the Romans, first by Mussolini, then by Hitler. Right? That doesn't make it not a Nazi salute, though.
Yeah. I was going to say, look, sorry, I'll let you keep on going in a second, but just on the Roman salute thing, I would just say that let's just say it is a Roman salute, whether it's a cliche or actual history, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's obviously better known as a Nazi salute.
Yes.
And the Nazis appropriated it from the Romans.
Exactly.
So that is the equivalent of drawing swastikas all over someone's house and going, well, actually, that's an ancient Indian symbol.
Yes.
Like, yes, it is an ancient Indian symbol, but everyone knows it better as a swastika, and there's no way on earth that you would think of the ancient Indian symbol without first thinking about the swastika.
That was exactly what I thought of as well. The only reason why I say that the Roman thing has more substance to it is because there would be a huge overlap between Musk's online fan base and the weird online fandom of the Roman Empire, which never involves reading books about the Roman Empire. It involves watching YouTube videos about how the Romans were really in touch with their manhood and that's why they conquered everything. But no, nonetheless, still a Nazi salute. That there is no way that Musk would not have known what that looked like.
Okay, so your position is that he absolutely intentionally did a Nazi salute.
Absolutely intentionally did a Nazi salute.
Okay, all right. We can continue with that on in a second. I just want to just go back for a second just to actually just put my view on what you've said so far.
Yes.
And then we'll continue. Because I've just been on TV saying a lot of things you've just said.
Yes.
But and I haven't changed my mind. But I do think that it absolutely was a Nazi salute. Objectively, it was a Nazi salute.
Yes.
In fact, it was a perfect Nazi salute. Like to the point where all these digits were exactly where they were meant to be. And they're like this, the hand on heart is part of the Nazi. It is a 100% Nazi salute. I don't think it was intentional. This is where we can argue, right? But I think to say, is it a Nazi salute, is it not a Nazi salute? I said alleged Nazi salute before because I think when you say Nazi salute, that and this is the reason the newspapers have been hedging is because there's an implication of intention that they don't want to make that
Well,
leap.
yeah, for example, if you were being criminally prosecuted in Germany for it, because it is outlawed in Germany, they would have to prove an intention.
Yeah. But I think objectively the action is that of a Nazi salute, and we shouldn't pretend otherwise.
Yes.
In terms of just a couple of the defenses that you ticked off, I definitely am not giving him any Asperger's excuse.
No.
Like once again, I'm pretty familiar with Asperger's, and it doesn't make you do that.
No.
Right? Yeah. And to be honest, I have done that exact gesture before, like when fooling around, not making Nazi salutes, but going, saluting people, doing this kind of stuff. Yeah. But then as soon as I did it, I thought, oh shit, that doesn't look right.
No.
And so then I kind of rolled with it and tried to sort of, back away from it a little bit.
Yes.
And I don't know how you could do that and not think to yourself as soon as you do it, oh shit.
Yeah.
And he clearly didn't, to me, he didn't apparently have any backtrack at all. Right, when he was doing it. He just kept on rolling with his
He did it again.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the awkward thing, this is where I'm going to contest you, and we can agree, disagree on this. I think he is incredibly awkward. And I mean, you said this is not him dancing, and look, you're right. He is particularly awkward when he dances. I mean, this is not good. When you're standing next to Trump, and Trump is the better dancer, and the more natural dancer, you're really struggling. The man is very awkward. And if you look at the full context, not just on that speech, but every time he gets up with Trump, remember when he was up doing the woo and all that kind of stuff. He's physically very ungainly, and he gets very excited. The man is clearly a massive nerd who never had any friends, and now he can convince himself that he's popular and that people just don't like him because he's rich and because he's powerful. And he gets himself very excited, and he was clearly very excited there. I mean, look at what he said a second later. He said, "It's thanks to you that the future of civilization is assured." The man was pinging. Whether it was on drugs or whether it was on adrenaline, he was out of control at that point, I feel. And he didn't seem to me like he was in the mood for a nuanced, ambiguous troll.
Yeah.
It seemed to me like he was like all over the shop. So that's what I think's going on. I think he was overexcited. I'm not sure I reckon he probably did realize halfway through, oh God, this might not have been great, but what's he going to do? Stop halfway through and go, oh, sorry for the Nazi salute.
Yeah, but he did it again.
Wow, the second time he did it was a little bit looser than the first time. The first time was perfect. But anyway, and he did say the thing. I know you discredit the "my heart goes out" the "my heart goes out to you" thing.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's what he's saying at the time he's doing. So even if it's stupid and weird,
he was standing on a stage, right?
Yeah.
If he's standing on a stage, the audience is down there, not up there.
Well, we don't know how high. Like, it was in a theater, wasn't it? It was in a stadium.
Anyway,
but you keep on going. I just wanted to put that out there because to give my view on what you've already said. Then keep going.
One of the reasons I don't like the awkward defense is because this is his way of signaling solidarity with online bros. Like, oh, they're victimizing me just because I'm awkward, just like you. Although he didn't even come up with it.
He's not saying that.
Yeah, it's his online bros who've come up with that defense, because their whole ideology is we're the most victimized people on earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're awkward. Okay.
Okay, keep going.
One of the reasons why I think this was definitely a Nazi salute,
Intentional Nazi salute.
intentional
Yeah,
Nazi
yeah.
salute, is because if you think of the possible reasons why he could have made it, there are so many of them.
Go for it.
There
Give us
is
some.
his support for a far-right German party that other German political parties won't cooperate because they see it as part of a direct lineage of
Yep.
Nazism. There is the fact...
Do they give Nazi salutes?
Sorry?
Do AFD give Nazi salutes?
No, because they would end up in prison for it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. There is the fact that online Nazis thought that it was great. Online Nazis were like, we don't care if this was a mistake or not. This is just wonderful.
Oh, yeah, they were loving it.
So they recognized exactly what the action was. There is the fact that he has amplified tweets that are so anti-Semitic that he had to go to Auschwitz to apologize for it.
That's true.
Yes. So, like, if it's an ideological thing, if it's communicating his ideological sympathies, this is not like Dolly Parton suddenly mysteriously did a Nazi salute.
That's true. That's true. Look, and
This is someone with a history of amplifying the far right in Germany doing a Nazi salute.
And I'll throw you one more as well.
Yes,
On
yeah.
top of what you just said, which is that he doesn't just roll with AFD and Tommy Robinson, but he also rolls with the sort of the alt-right troll crowd
He does.
who do that kind of stuff for a joke.
Yes.
And that is the Sam Cedar point of view. That's him trying to be outrageous and oh, did I do it? Did I not do it? Like playing with people,
yeah.
like because trolls do that kind of stuff, and he does hang with a lot of trolls.
Yeah.
And so there are two great. So I mean, apart from what you just said, the other reason he could do it intentionally is he could do it intentionally to be a dickhead.
Yeah. So if he's doing that, maybe that's a little bit better than being ideologically committed to Nazism. But we're still talking about the richest man in the world, arguably the most powerful man in the United States at the moment, possibly apart from Trump himself, at the inauguration of a president who has frequently been likened to a fascist doing a Nazi salute.
Yes.
Right? That is a permission signal. Okay, so my immediate thought when I saw this was, I feel sorry for any teacher tomorrow because teachers around the world are now going to have to deal with teenage boys doing Nazi salutes at them and saying, I was saying my heart goes out to you. Right?
Yeah.
This gesture, he's normalizing this gesture, he's legitimizing it, he's giving permission to it. Another thing, though, I think that he was doing was basically a dominance ritual.
Yeah.
Okay, he would have been thrilled by the fact that so few media outlets were prepared to outright call it a Nazi salute. That is how well he's got the media trained. He would have been particularly thrilled by the response of right-wing media, which was just denying that it was a Nazi salute at all. Right? So there was I saw there was an article online by Sky News Australia political reporter Oscar Godsell, which typically of these kinds of news articles didn't involve the author actually saying anything, but just quoting people online saying, oh, this is really bad faith. This is telling lies about Elon Musk. This is why nobody believes the media, blah, 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 blah. So we now know what the Sky News Australia position on Nazi salutes is for the next 4 years if they're done by people like Elon Musk. But he would have been most thrilled of all, and in fact he was openly thrilled by the response of the Anti-Defamation League. Okay, now the background to this is Anti-Defamation League, organisation founded in 1913 to combat anti-Semitism. They actually got a mention in my book, Religious Persecution and Political Order in the United States, because they were a very important part of the anti-persecution infrastructure. Their leader, Jonathan Greenblatt, has openly conflicted with Musk over the last couple of years after he was amplifying incredibly anti-Semitic tweets.
Yeah. The very one that sent him to Auschwitz.
Yes. And when advertisers started fleeing, he then wanted to sue the Anti-Defamation League for defamation and was making all kinds of threats against them. Now, that's where the fatal turn happened. Jonathan Greenblatt decided that it was better to have Musk onside rather than offside, and has spent more than a year, building bridges with Elon Musk. From a strategic point of view, I can see where he's coming from. Elon Musk is the owner of the world's biggest, well, not the world's biggest social media platform, but of one of the world's most consequential social media platforms. I'm sure he would have been thinking, we don't want this guy just turning this platform into an engine of anti-Semitism. Yeah, if we can get him on side, if we can not alienate him, make him feel like we respect him, then then that will bring good things to us. This has turned out to be a colossal mistake, and it wouldn't be the first time that a victimized group has made the mistake of saying, wow, if we just suck up to a really powerful person, then that person's going to protect us.
Let me read you his tweet. This is a delicate moment. It's a new day, and yet so many are on edge. Our politics are inflamed, and social media only adds to the anxiety. It seems that Elon Musk made an awkward gesture in a moment of enthusiasm, not a Nazi salute. But again, we appreciate the people on edge. In this moment, all sides should give one another a bit of grace, perhaps even the benefit of the doubt, and take a breath. This is a new beginning. Let's hope for healing and work towards unity in the months and years ahead.
Amazing. And what was Elon Musk's response?
Thanks.
His response was a laugh cry emoji. A laugh cry emoji with thanks, guys. In other words, you have been successfully bullied. Right? That was what he was saying. That look at the fun that I am having at your expense. I've just thrown the most offensive gesture that you can imagine in your face, and you've written a maudlin tweet about let's show each other a bit of grace. He loved that. Now, it hardly needs to be said that Jonathan Greenblatt hasn't been showing a lot of people a lot of grace or giving them the benefit of the doubt over the last year and a half.
That is true.
Okay, so he has likened wearing a keffiyeh to wearing a swastika, right? So he's been pushing the line that every pro-Palestinian student protester is the second coming of Hitler. But when you've got the richest man in the world throwing out a couple of Nazi salutes at a presidential inauguration, it's time for grace. It's time for the benefit of the doubt. He has made a colossal mistake in trying to butter up Musk, and now he can't back away from that mistake. That is going to seriously damage the credibility of the ADL, which was already suffering from quite a bit of credibility damage.
Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez responded with, just to illustrate what you're saying.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, you're defending a Heil Hitler salute that was performed and repeated for emphasis and clarity. People can officially stop listening to you as any sort of reputable source of information now. You work for them. And by the way, I should say, I read that out as just an example of the kind of thing you're talking about, but just I don't know what's going through her head, so I can't comment on that. But just the tendency of people to say on social media to say, I don't like what you just did then, so therefore I'm going to write you off forever. I hate that. I really hate that. And it just happens all the time, and it's a very Trumpian attitude, by the way. You're only as good as your last comment, whatever that may be. But leave that aside. She may have a long list of things that she, like you said, the cafe one.
Yes, yeah.
She may have a long list of grievances.
Oh, she does
with Jonathan Greenblatt.
Yes, yeah.
But the actual quote there, I just wish people didn't talk like that. But anyway, it illustrates what you're talking about.
And Abe Foxman, who was the previous president of the ADL, has said that, to him it was a Heil Hitler salute. But he doesn't want to, he's resisted making much further comment because it's such a kind of destructive internal debate.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this was a very important signal that Musk is giving right at the beginning of the inauguration, which is he can do whatever he wants. He has got the media, especially the right-wing media, very well trained. He's got some of his erstwhile opponents absolutely cowed and very scared. and that for the next 4 years, free speech is going to mean him and anyone that he gifts the mantle of being his ally can say whatever they want.
Okay, I reckon. I disagree with you a few things there. But firstly, I reckon precisely because of what you just said before about the significance of Elon Musk doing a Nazi salute in inauguration for someone who has been accused of being a fascist.
Yes, yeah.
The enormity of that and the significance of that is exactly why I think it wasn't an intentional Nazi salute. You just go, why would he do that? Like what? Like, I mean, let's put it this way: Elon Musk is not someone who holds back from making a goose of himself on Twitter.
Yeah.
Have you ever, as you said, he's made a couple of anti-Semitic comments, but not Nazi kind of anti-Semitic, more alt-right kind of anti-Semitic than Nazi kind of anti-Semitic. Have you ever seen him dabbling with Nazi imagery before? Blatant Nazi imagery. I've never seen him do that. And he's done just about everything except for that. Why would he debut his Nazi? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Why would he
It
do it there?
makes perfect sense because that was the moment where he's saying, now I've got the political protection as well as the money to do this.
But why would he want to do that?
To show how powerful he is.
Why is he?
To show that whatever pops into his head, whatever he wants to say, no matter how offensive it is, he can say it.
Why would he want to show that?
He can believe whatever he wants to believe because this is, for him, this is the point of having this much power and having this much wealth. Let's not forget he used a large chunk of his wealth to overpay for Twitter just so that more people could find out what he was thinking about and saying at any given moment.
Yeah, because he wanted them to think he was a legend.
Exactly. His dream is not just to be the richest man on earth.
Going around Nazi saluting people doesn't make you seem like a legend. It makes you seem like a dickhead.
But to a normal person, maybe. But just his ability to get away with it. This is the thing. He has gotten away with it. There aren't going to be any consequences for him.
I agree.
Yes.
I agree with that. He's gotten away with it. But I just, for me, it's a step too far to say he engineered this situation just so he could prove that he can get away with anything. I think you're mind reading him to be evil. And I think that as a general rule of thumb, people aren't evil. Like, they are often stupid, they are reckless, they're dickheads, they're whatever. But just, you're making him out, I think, to be a really, really horrible person.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't necessarily say evil, but really, really horrible person describes it pretty well.
And I would say, like, it's not like those people don't exist.
Yeah.
But I just think there's a very high burden of proof. And I think your burden of proof is, well, it must be the case. Like, as I said, I'm not in any way, shape or form denying that it's a Nazi salute. But what I'm saying is that for you to be absolutely sure it must be intentional, because he must be going out of his way to rub everyone, the entire world's nose in how inferior they are to him, that he can go around doing horrible things and get away with it without any consequence. That's what this is all about. I feel like that's a pretty long bow without evidence.
I am not absolutely sure of that. What I'm doing is inference to the best explanation. Okay. And I find that he was doing that, a more credible explanation than somehow he didn't know what he was doing when he did a perfectly executed Nazi salute.
Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah. I mean,
it's amazing that there's this sort of Musk fan complex that venerates him as this absolute genius. But then whenever he does something like this, they're like, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what he looks like.
Yeah.
I just find it very hard to believe that this person who has been put in a position of so much power and who has so much wealth and who is online all the time and knows exactly what he looks like in an interview is so conscious of his image that he wouldn't know what he was doing with this.
Okay. I think that, we're both mind reading.
Yeah.
my personal view of my mind reading is that the most likely explanation is that he is a loser who is a super nerd and as soon as anyone shows him affection or adoration or he sees or he has any sense of being the center of attention, it goes to his head. And he doesn't have a lot of the control. And I'm not saying, oh my God, my arms just flying everywhere. Oh, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is he just is perennially doing ill-advised things when he's in that situation, saying ill-advised things, just being a loser. And I think this is just one more example of that. As I said, I can't imagine how he couldn't have thought as he was doing that, oh, fuck. But I think that I assume he was trying to make the best of the situation.
The expression on his face didn't say, oh, fuck.
No, I know. But I mean, the other thing I would say is that if he, the way you interpreted his response to Jonathan Greenblatt, I'm not sure I agree with either. Like this, I've got you now, screw you. I just don't think that's his style. Like, I think I've read a lot of his tweets. I think that he, okay, let's put it this way. To me, the last 2 days, he seems on tilt. He's been replying to almost every single centrist or left-wing person supporting him with thanks and oh my God and all this kind of stuff. He's been doing so much replying to people in damage control mode. It seems to me like he's not happy about this situation. Whereas if he actually was if he was going out of his way to create this Nazi salute, he'll been reveling in it. And I know you're interpreting his actions as him actually reveling in it. I disagree. Okay. I think he's on tilt, like he often is.
Okay.
That's my interpretation. And just one more thing about the neo-Nazis. They definitely loved it. There's no doubt about that. But I think there is, I'm not sure that, maybe some neo-Nazis thought it was a legitimate, intentional Nazi salute. But to me, it seemed more like delight. Because I read the same articles everyone else did. And it seemed to me their comments could just as easily be interpreted as delight that Nazi salutes are in the news, as delight that Elon Musk is intentionally trying Nazi salute people. Just like they were just loving it. They was like, hey, we're all talking Nazi salutes, fantastic. Like that was the vibe I was getting, which we can disagree with. But anyway, do you have any other thoughts about this whole thing?
No,
or a response
I just want to put it out there.
Yep.
You did see a Nazi salute.
But look, that's one thing we can agree on.
Just wondering, chat, do you want all of the footage of you doing Nazi salutes from the last half an hour? Do you want that blurred out?
Yeah,
that would be very funny.
Yeah, you do that.
Yeah,
you do that like
cool, sweet, thanks.
Okay, let's get to something really old, but I know you all want to talk about it because so many people have asked me about it in person.
Let's
and
talk
that
about
is
it.
Greenland. Dave, keep on going.
Okay. I'm not going to go all the way back into the history of Greenland, but
why not?
I think it is very significant that Trump has made so much of the issue of territorial expansion. And even though he didn't mention Greenland itself in the inaugural speech, he did mention Panama, which has been the other thing that he's been talking about. Okay, so I want to talk through this idea of territorial expansion.
Okay.
And I want to start by saying we shouldn't just dismiss these ideas as these are so unserious that if they get forgotten in a few months' time, it's just Trump shooting his mouth off. No, I think this is how Trump imagines himself creating a legacy as one of the greatest American presidents.
Okay. I think you should hold that thought, and we should just for the one person who hasn't heard of this story, I think we should set up the Greenland thing, and then you continue.
Oh, okay, right.
So I'll just do a setup of what we're talking about. Okay, Trump put out a statement at the beginning of the year. Said, for purposes of national security and freedom throughout the world, the United States of America feels that the ownership and control of Greenland is an absolute necessity. And on Truth Social, he followed it up with, Greenland is an incredible place and the people will benefit tremendously if and when it becomes part of our nation. We will protect it and cherish it from a very vicious outside world. Make Greenland great again. And then this answer in one of his press conferences really got people's attention.
Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
It was around about then that I received many, many text messages with the word Greenland in it. And then it got even weirder because Don Jr. then visited Greenland, supposedly to film stuff for his podcast. We're going to have a look at some of the scenes there. You can see that there's way too many people wearing MAGA caps there. This was like lunch at a cafe or something where just pretty much every MAGA cap outside America turned up in this Greenland cafe. Obviously, it made no sense. Turned out they were mostly homeless people who wanted a free meal. You could tell that they didn't know who those people were, by the way, because Charlie Kirk was standing there and nobody booed. So they clearly had no idea who these people were. Sitting there with their newly minted MAGA caps. It was all very silly, but then it got a bit serious because then Trump started to turn up the pressure in a very Trumpian way, which was Denmark. Like Denmark, for those who don't know, has some big companies, right? Lego is Danish.
Yep.
The shipping giant Maersk is Danish. Novo Nordisk, which you probably haven't heard of, but Ozempic you've probably heard of, which is one of their biggest products. They do billions of dollars, especially with Ozempic, with America. Billions of dollar trade, that is. And Trump rang up the Danish PM when Anne Applebaum was there. And Anne Applebaum quoted the Danish PM directly after the phone call. Emma Applebaum said that she was shaken, visually shaken, and her quote was, "It has been suggested from the American side that unfortunately a situation may arise where we work less together than we do today in the economic area." So obviously Trump started to threaten them with tariffs.
Yes.
Which is what he does every single time.
Yes.
That is obviously a serious threat from Trump.
Yes.
Because you know that he will do it. Oh yeah, and the Danish response to all this, they were clearly freaked out. Hours after Trump mentioned Denmark for the second time, Greenland for the second time, Denmark announced a $1.6 billion defense boost for Greenland. Admittedly, not sure it stacks up with US defense funding.
No.
Because the defense minister said that would buy, amongst other things, 2 new inspection ships, 2 new long-range drones, and 2 extra dog sled teams.
Yes.
Now, dog sled teams are great for making Disney movies, but I'm not sure they're necessarily as good as a nuclear weapon to defend your country. But admittedly, they also want to upgrade the airport for F-35s. But look, here's the big one. The Danes were so spooked out that they changed their coat of arms.
Yeah, well, the king changed the coat of arms.
Yeah. So it's from the left one to the right one. You see how the polar bear is bigger on the right? The polar bear is representing Greenland. I don't know what more the Greenlanders could ask for, but the fact is that this is now actually getting – the Danes are clearly scared. The Greenlanders seem to be a bit spooked out as well. Like, people are taking this seriously. And so that is the backdrop for what you are talking about, these expansion attempts with Greenland in particular.
I'm not sure I'd describe the Danes as scared.
Okay.
I would describe them as very pissed off.
Okay.
And just to go back to the military and economic coercion thing. So he was not ruling out military action against a NATO ally.
Yes.
Okay. So one interpretation of this, which I'm going to push back on straight away, is always Trump just says this stuff as a bargaining tactic. Okay. Now, this was the greatest example of this that I could find, which was in the article about the new Danish defense package, which is Army Major Steen Kiergaard of the Danish Defence Academy suggests it may have been Trump's intention to pressure Denmark into such a move. He says, "I think Trump is smart. He gets Denmark to prioritise its Arctic military capabilities by raising this voice." Trump was tweeting about this over Christmas. Yes. Trump has been stewing with resentment since 2018, the first time the Danish Prime Minister told him that Greenland wasn't for sale. Trump is sending his son over with Charlie Kirk to try to whip up Greenlandic support for a, let's become Americans movement. Trump is talking in his inauguration about a golden age of America and an age of territorial expansion. Trump is not just doing this to get 2 extra dog sleds out of the Danish defense budget. Right? He's not looking at that going, got him.
Yeah. No,
this is where hardball negotiating tactics get you. No, he is serious about territorial expansion.
America's wanted Greenland for a long time.
America has wanted Greenland for a long time.
Like the 1860s, I think.
1867, Andrew Johnson tried to buy it. Now, Andrew Johnson had managed to buy Alaska for a price that would nowadays be considered pretty cheap from Russia. And of course, this is, it's a couple of generations, but it's not that far away from the Louisiana Purchase, which massively expanded U.S. territory. So it certainly wouldn't have been out of the question back in the 1860s to buy Greenland. Although, by the way, in terms of the relationship between presidential greatness and territorial acquisition, Andrew Johnson was the last one who had a major piece of territorial acquisition by purchase. Do you know how he's considered by historians?
Not positively.
You wouldn't find many historians who place him outside the bottom 3 or bottom 5 of presidents. Yeah. He was the first one to be impeached. First one ever to be impeached, right? That might be a useful lesson. If you get impeached, that's generally more memorable than buying territory. Yeah. But anyway, so back to the story. Yeah. Harry Truman also wanted to buy it in 1946 for Cold War reasons. Denmark said no. And so there is this history of acquiring territory by paying for it, but it hasn't really happened on a very large scale for a long time. So there have been people saying, look, historically, this isn't crazy to say that the US should buy Greenland. The US has done this before. Other countries have done this before. But there have been some important changes over the last 100 years. And one of them is you can no longer buy and sell vast tracts of land without any kind of consideration of what the people who live there think.
Yes.
Okay. And ironically, the United States President Woodrow Wilson was one of the people who really sort of enshrined this principle in international relations of national self-determination. Yep. Even if the US hasn't always followed it, hasn't always respected it, it kind of is their idea.
Yep.
Right. So, no, you can't just buy gigantic tracts of territory anymore without reference to what people in that country think. Now, regarding Greenland, I certainly don't think that Denmark has a divine right to Danish sovereignty over Greenland, although there is a member of Danish parliament who disagrees with me. And this is just to show that not all Danes have the same view as Major Steen Kyersgaard of saying, this is just a negotiating tactic. Some Danes have a bit of a different view.
Dear President Trump, listen very carefully. Greenland has been part of the Danish kingdom for 800 years. It's an integrated part of our country. It is not for sale. Let me put it in words you might understand. Mr. Trump, fuck off.
I never thought I'd hear a Dane speaking like that.
That was immediately followed by a translator saying, if that translation is correct, what you have just said is not allowed in Parliament.
Now that's what I expect a Dane to say.
Yes. So anyway, Dane's not very impressed by this. Now, Greenlanders themselves are not particularly thrilled with Danish rule, or at least their prime minister is not. Their prime minister is pushing for Greenlandic independence.
Yes.
There has been a lot of talk recently about forced sterilisation that Denmark committed against Indigenous Greenlandic people in the 50s and 60s.
Wow.
Yeah, there's bad stuff. Like any history of colonisation of Indigenous people, there's always going to be bad stuff there. And from what I've read, there is, I think, some sort of acceptance in Denmark that the future of Greenland will be decided by the Greenlandic people.
Yeah, just to jump onto that.
Yeah.
It's not just the Prime Minister.
No.
In their last elections, pro-independence parties got 80% of the vote. 26 of 31 seats
Yes.
in their parliament is held by pro-independence parties.
Yes.
And they only just recently made Greenlander the official language as well.
Yeah.
So there's a seriously separatist vibe in Greenland.
There really is.
Yeah.
And they're not going to cast off, the Danish yoke in order to then accept American rule. And this is a very important point I want to make from the outset of the Trump administration about imperial fantasies. Okay, those imperial fantasies were a lot easier to have 100 or 200 years ago when the great powers didn't need to care at all about the people who actually lived in the countries that they were colonizing. But one of the major developments of the last 100 years is the almost universal development of nationalism. As Benedict Anderson said, nationalism is basically the one source of loyalty that survived the 20th century. Right? There's basically no other ideology that commands people's loyalties, that commands their emotions in the way that nationalism does. And one of the remarkable things about Trump is he has understood this in relation to the United States probably better than any politician since Reagan.
Yeah.
Right? This is a key to his success, is understanding how to harness this nationalism, this resentment that Americans have about their sovereignty being eroded.
Yes.
But he never seems to imagine that other countries might feel the same way.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not just him. A lot of the people who are encouraging these kinds of imperial fantasies are also making the same kind of category mistake of thinking that, especially that it's only the big countries where nationalism matters, right? So it's only the US, it's only Russia, it's only China, only their nationalist feelings matter. The best example that I've seen of this was an article in Politico.
Yes.
With the portentous title, "An expert in grand strategy thinks Trump is onto something."
Okay.
This is written by Thomas P.M. Barnett, who's the head of something called senior business strategist at Throughline Inc.
Sure. Why not?
Author of America's New Map, which he plugs in this article.
Okay.
And he was the author of a book during the Iraq War called The Pentagon's New Map. There are so many phrases in here where you just read this and think, wanker.
Yeah. I already thought that before you even read one of them.
That I thought that this was satire by either Charles Firth or Aaron Timms. Yeah, like, where is all this expansionist energy coming from? How did Trump's America First isolationism suddenly morph into an America's First mergers and acquisition M&A strategy? That is just a taste of what is in this article. There's just all of this gobbledygook, like 3 key trends animate the globe right now. An east-west decoupling dynamic, a re-regionalisation imperative along north-south lines that brings nearshoring production close to home markets, and a growing superpower clash animating all these races, blah, 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 blah. It's just like, it's business jargon mixed with international relations jargon.
Yes.
And by the way, this guy does have a PhD in political science. He is one of my tribe that I'm talking about here. But this article was just filled with an incredible amount of nonsense. So, yeah, Europe and the US, with Trump's return, seem destined to complete their conscious uncoupling like 2 self-absorbed career celebrities whose careers no longer jibe.
Dave, don't read more.
He's okay. No, there's one more bit. Okay, so he's hanging this article partly on the claim that he says, in seeming reply, the August British newspaper, The Economist, calls for the EU, having just cut a landmark trade deal with South America's Mercosur bloc, to now vigorously invite Canada into its economic union. If that deal makes sense for the European Union, why doesn't it make similar sense for America when it comes to Canada and Greenland? Now, okay,
he's going for a 2-for-1.
At the risk of raising the stakes of inconsequential views.
This is the most inconsequential view.
It wasn't. The EU has not proposed letting Canada in.
Yeah.
The Economist, which if you ever read The Economist, like, there's a lot of fucking trolling in the unsigned articles in The Economist, right? It's something The Economist has suggested, but this launches him into this riff on how this new kind of imperialism might actually happen. And he even is taking Trump's trolling on Canada seriously. Right. Now, okay, I'm suggesting you should take Trump very seriously when it comes to Greenland and Panama, which I'll get into for a sec. I do not for a second think that Trump is serious about Canada joining as the 51st. So that is just trolling. That is just trolling of Justin Trudeau.
Can I tell you
Yes.
how unlikely it would be for the Canada push to be a serious push? This is how unlikely it would be.
Yes.
Even Jesse Waters wasn't taking it seriously. Just have a look at this.
I get it. You say that Americans don't have a problem with Canadians, and we don't. But it seems like you have a problem with us. Because if I were a citizen of another country and I was a neighbor of the United States, I would consider it a privilege to be taken over by the United States of America. That's what everybody else in the world wants, American citizenship. For some reason, that's repellent to you Canadians. And I find that personally offensive, Premier.
Okay, so that's Jesse Waters doing a parody of that dude.
Yes, yeah.
Not even he is taking the Canada thing seriously.
By the way, he's talking to Doug Ford, who I've heard is apparently sometimes referred to in Toronto as the Honest Ed's Trump. Honest Ed's apparently being like the crazy Charlies of Ontario. But Doug Ford hasn't been taking any of this shit from Trump. But okay, so this is the last bit of this article I'm going to read. This is where Trump's seemingly absurd ambition punches through our current strategic fog, embracing today's inconceivable to prevent tomorrow's inevitable. That is genuine grand strategy. But let's also get more real in our thinking and the terms we offer. Justin Trudeau is right when he says Canada will never become America's 51st state. But what if it became America's 51st through 59th states? Would that be enough political power and standing for Canadians to choose over admission into the EU? Say 18 Senate seats and more congressional districts than California's 52 seats? Just imagine him at this point doing the Tony Montana style plunge of his head into a mountain of cocaine. That's a respectful offer. Greenland holds 2 seats in Denmark's 179-member parliament. Does that strike you as more empowering than 2 seats in the US Senate? How about a $57 billion buyout package that makes every Greenlander an instant millionaire? Does Trump have your undivided attention now?
Why would Trump want to give away 20 Senate seats to the Democrats. Which is exactly what would happen if Canada took nine states and Greenland took the other one.
And
if it was Panama as well, that's another 2 Democratic seats as well. These are all left-wing countries.
And how much would Republicans love the idea? Let's just give every Greenlander $1 million.
Yes.
Okay, so a couple of points.
Yeah.
First of all, none of this is anything that Trump actually said. This is just this one guy's imperialist fantasy.
Yes.
However, that's closer to the mark than Major Steen Kysgaard saying this is just a negotiating strategy.
Yeah.
Right, that is actually closer to Trump's imperial ambitions. But one of the reasons why I said that was it shows you how far removed these imperial fantasies, whether they're his or Trump's, are from the reality of contemporary political emotion and the desire for self-determination that everybody has and the force of nationalism. Even if you did offer every Greenlander $1 million, like imagine how you would respond to the offer. Here's $1 million, give away citizenship, give away the land where your ancestors are buried, give away land to which you feel you have a religious connection. It's insulting. Offering people money for something sacred is insulting.
It is, although I would say this, that if we look at the current context, I just told you how the whole of the Greenland Parliament is pushing for independence. and how why aren't they an independent nation, you might ask? Because Denmark has explicitly said, just need a referendum and then, then you're your own country. So why haven't they done it? And I think the answer is the $600 million that Denmark gives them every year.
Well, yeah.
I think that's the actual answer, that Denmark has bought them real cheap, and is I mean, $600 million it's a lot of money, but it's a lot of money for 57,000 people, but it's not much compared to the control over mining, for instance, that Denmark has in Greenland, and the trade benefits, etc. So my suspicion is that if Denmark wasn't giving them $600 million a year, they'd already be independent. I mean, that $600 million a year is literally half their revenue. So I suspect if they weren't doing that, they'd already be independent. Yeah. So maybe you can buy them. Although I don't think I'm not being serious about that, because I think there is. I mean, we'll get to it. I'm just sitting here patiently. There is a very obvious solution to all this, but which doesn't involve anyone buying anyone. But you keep going before I give it.
Yeah. Okay. So this brings us to this other bizarre element of this, which is there are good strategic reasons for wanting control of Greenland.
Absolutely.
Don't deny those at all.
Yeah. Should I take people through them?
Yes,
for those who don't know? Okay. Firstly, Greenland's on the shortest route from North America to Europe. That's pretty important. It's already a useful shipping route right now. As the ice melts, it's become more useful.
Yep.
Summer sea ice is declining by 12% per decade. The Arctic is expected to be ice-free by 2040. And so it's going to be a very valuable shipping route very soon. Even in 2023, there are already 79 transit voyages across the Northern Sea route. Nearly all of them were going from Siberia to China. But a voyage from Japan to Europe takes about 22 days via the Suez Canal, but only 10 days via the Arctic. And Greenland's right in the middle of these transatlantic trade routes. So that's the first thing. You save a heap of money if you control that route. That's the first thing. Second thing, security perspective, right now the fastest growing game in town is destroying each other's undersea cables.
Yes.
There are undersea cables all over that area. People who control Greenland have access to these undersea cables, which is an important thing from a security perspective. Yeah. Then I just mentioned the mining before. They've got uranium, zinc, lithium, graphite, rare earth minerals, trillions of dollars worth.
Yeah.
Multiple trillions of dollars worth. In oil alone, they've got $1.1 to $4 trillion worth of oil at current prices. It's a punishing place to mine right now, but in a few years of climate change, that might change. Also, they haven't exploited nearly what they could because of what I said before. Right now, when they mine, it goes to Denmark.
Yes.
And why would they do that? So they're quite anti-mining at the moment because it doesn't help them. But and also they're probably suspicious about Denmark looking after the mines, environmentally speaking.
Yes.
And so they have quite strict restrictions. But there's so much money there. If someone controls Greenland, they control a lot of mining. Also, they have a claim on the Lomonosov Ridge, however you pronounce it, which is an underwater mountain range with heaps of oils and gas, which both Russia and have a claim on as well.
Yes.
And so do Greenland. And so whoever controls Greenland has a claim on a heap of undersea mining as well. And the best reason for America to be there is to stop China being there, because China's been moving in that direction for years. And America, and if America doesn't go there, China's trying really hard.
Yes.
The whole let's test out if you can buy Greenland. China's trying really hard to see if you can.
Yes, but to lead on to my next point, which is the US doesn't need to exercise sovereignty in order to A, keep China out, B, control the shipping routes, and C, get the mining.
Yeah.
So yes, China was trying for a while. In 2022, there was an article in Politico which pointed out several Chinese mining ventures had been shut down because they were, in the words of one analyst, kind of vetoed by Washington.
Oh.
That was American diplomats got on the phone to Copenhagen, and Copenhagen put an end to these attempted Chinese exploration.
Yeah.
As of 2022, the only Chinese in Greenland were people involved with the fishing industry.
Yeah.
Okay, so because of the US-Denmark relationship,
Yes.
they can already keep China out.
And this is why it's so insulting what
Yes.
they're saying to Denmark, because Denmark's been very good to them.
Yes.
Denmark has let them
Yes.
mine. Denmark has let them
Yes.
have their way with the trade routes.
Yeah.
Denmark's got a Space Force base in the
Yes.
middle of Greenland.
Yeah.
A massive Space Force base. They've even got military bases there.
Yes.
I don't know what more America can want that Denmark hasn't given them freely.
Now, there would be nothing to stop American mining companies from negotiating exploration leases with Greenland. If the United States wanted to build more infrastructure in Greenland, I don't think that anyone's going to object to that. These days, you do not need to exercise sovereignty in order to further your interests. You know who's a really good example of this? China.
Yeah.
They further their interests all over the place by building infrastructure, which nobody says no to, by pouring in millions of dollars of investment and infrastructure. And the response from the US and from a lot of US allies, including the one that we're in right now, is often just to scold the countries that accept Chinese infrastructure and aid without actually offering them anything, like without making a counteroffer, just saying, no, you can't do that. I mean, if we are in this new imperial great game, we have to recognize that it's happening in the 21st century, not the 19th century. Not only are there questions of nationalism, self-determination, there's also the domestic audience back home to consider, which is probably not going to be as enthusiastic as about imperial ventures as they used to be, especially not after the Iraq War. Okay, that brings us to Panama.
Okay, before we do that,
Yes.
can I tell you what I teased before, which is just the obvious solution.
Yeah.
And so obvious, I can't believe that America won't do this if Trump genuinely wants Greenland.
Yeah.
It's so obvious.
What's that?
And that is, I just told you before how they want to be independent, but they can't afford to because Denmark is paying their bills, right, with half their revenue. The first thing that happened after Trump agitated, after he shook it's not a coconut tree, I don't know what trees they have in Greenland.
They don't have trees.
The iceberg.
It was called Greenland as a scam to get people to move there.
When Trump shook the iceberg, the first response from Greenland was the Prime Minister saying, we don't want to be Greenland. We don't want to be Danes, and we don't want to be Americans. We want to be Greenlanders. Yeah. And he declared a desire for an independence referendum in 2025. You just said America invented the little countries doing national self-determination thing. They should own it. Yeah. They should agitate for Greenland to become independent.
Exactly, yes.
Go. Yeah. Why are you guys with Denmark for? You don't need Denmark. You can stand your own. They should push it and encourage it as much as you can. Go, guys, we'll help you. Yeah. We'll help you be an independent country. Okay, so they become an independent country, and then you know what's going to happen? Yeah, they're going to want to do a mining deal. Yes, because they're going to need cash. Exactly, and America's going to have heaps of cash. Yes, they can have their mining deals, their exclusive mining deals. They can pay for all the things they want to do, and Greenland will happily take their dosh. Yep. The Greenlanders will be way happier than they are at the moment, and America will be in a better situation than they currently are, and they're currently in a great situation. It's just so obvious. And the thing is, this is not new. I did not invent this arrangement. It's called a compact of free association. It already exists when an independent nation state, even a UN member country, designs an agreement with America. Micronesia did it. Marshall Islands did it. Palau did it. They're not states. They're not part of America. They've just made an agreement with America where America gets all the benefits of having of working with these countries without having to give up Senate seats to Democrats. It's such an easy thing to do. And the Greenland PM, he knows that. He was practically begging for this arrangement on Fox News only last week.
Could you foresee a deal with the U.S.? we don't want to be Danes. We don't even want to be Americans. We want to be Greenlanders, but we know that we have a lot of to cooperate together with, especially with the defense and security. But the last years, we also have a strong partnership between our countries. So I believe we have a lot to cooperate with.
It's so obvious these aspects. I also mentioned, of course, the security agreement.
Yeah.
57,000 people can't defend a country the size of Greenland. They need America's defense.
Although the only country that's ever militarily threatened Greenland was Trump last week.
Well, that is true. That is true.
Yes.
But anyway, it's just such an obvious solution. If Trump wasn't an idiot, he would grab that with both hands. It would be cheap, easy, and successful. I wouldn't be surprised if they do this. But in the meantime, I'll just sit there just shaking my head going, what is going on?
Yeah.
It's so obvious.
It's because Trump is serious about territorial expansion. Like, what can you actually do to put yourself in the pantheon of great US presidents? Like, how do you get better than, say, Eisenhower, for example? Pretty well regarded president. But he didn't add any new territory. He did add Alaska as a state, but Alaska was already, a territory. How do you get considered better than Reagan? Right? Well-regarded president, especially by Republicans, but he didn't add any new territory. He's trying to think of ways to be considered better than previous presidents, and adding an island that looks so huge on a Mercator projection, the same way that Alaska does, that would be something. Okay, but
Panama.
This brings us to Panama.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the other bit of territorial acquisition that Trump wants. Now, this is a bit different for a couple of reasons, right? One is it's more plausible, although I'm ultimately going to say implausible, that Trump really is using this as a bargaining tactic, right? Because he's saying American ships are getting charged too much for going through the Panama Canal. So you could say by threatening to take it over by military force, he's just trying to negotiate better rates for American ships. But once again, I don't think that's actually the case.
I don't think it's that either.
Second thing is that the United States has more of an historical claim on the Panama Canal because it was American. It was the United States government that built the Panama Canal. Okay, I am going to give you just a little bit of history here. Panama was historically, until around the turn of the 20th century, was a province of Colombia. It was a very isolated province from Colombia because there's a vast impenetrable rainforest between Colombia and the bulk of Panama. There was an independence movement within Panama. In 1903, the United States did actually sign a treaty with Colombia in order to build a canal through Panama, but that was rejected by the Colombian Senate. Previously, French companies had tried to build a Panama Canal, the same ones who were responsible for the Suez Canal, and they failed at a cost of 26,000 lives because there was a lot of malaria and other tropical diseases in Panama.
Let me guess, that was part of Trump's 38,000 lives.
That is absolutely part of Trump's 38,000 lives. Okay, so coming back, though, to the United States, when it was rejected by Colombia, the United States started very, very vigorously supporting the Panamanian independence movement.
Like they should do with Greenland.
Yes. Sent gunboats along to make sure that the Colombians wouldn't try to suppress it. Colombian troops, poorly trained conscripts mostly, did finally get to Panama City, but by that time the US troops were already there. So bang, we've got Panamanian independence. The first thing that gets negotiated is the Panama Canal.
Yeah.
Now, even though the Panama Canal was basically the reason why Panama got independence, even at the time it was very controversial. Even at the time, Panamanians were not happy about giving away their sovereignty straight away, having just won it. So the Panama Canal Treaty gave the US not exactly sovereignty, but sovereign-like powers in perpetuity was the original phrasing of it. So the way that worked was the US government built the Panama Canal, largely using laborers from various parts of the Caribbean. Trump likes to say 38,000 Americans died during the building of the Panama Canal. 350 Americans died during the building of the Panama Canal. That's still a lot.
Yeah.
Every life is important. 6,000 labourers from Barbados died, though, during the building of the Panama Canal by the US government. A few weeks ago, the New York Times had an article about this that linked to their own article about this from 1964. That is a really, really good article, really informative about it, because it gets you right into the American mindset at the time. So the first foreign policy crisis of Lyndon Johnson's presidency was riots in the Panama Canal zone. Okay, so by that point, the Panama Canal had been open for 50 years, and it was basically two countries. The vast majority of Panama's population of 1 million lived in incredible poverty, while inside the Panama Canal zone, there's something like 25,000 Americans living in the kinds of conditions that they were accustomed to living in the United States. There was a lot of political unrest about this because Panamanians couldn't get employment in the Panama Canal zone. They regarded it as a complete affront to their sovereignty that the canal was there. Anyone who wanted to get elected in Panama at that time had to do so on a platform of nationalizing the Panama Canal. Now, in terms of the emotional power of nationalism, what really set the whole issue off was actually the issue of flags. So given this sort of uneasy situation of co-sovereignty over the Panama Canal that existed legally, no national flags were allowed to be displayed within the Panama Canal zone. But apparently, shithead American high school students, encouraged by their shithead parents, loved flying American flags just to piss off the Panamanians and show that we may be in Panama, but we're Americans and this is America.
Yeah.
So President Eisenhower decreed that if American and Panamanian flags had to be flown together within the Panama Canal zone, could not be flown unless they were being flown together. That did not solve the problem. So in 1964, at a high school in Balboa on the Pacific end of the Panama Canal, these American shithead students defiantly raised the American flag. Some bunch of pissed off Panamanians broke into the Panama Canal zone. They tore down the American flag, put up their own flag. The American students defiled the Panamanian flag. Riots ensued. The military got involved. 20 Panamanians died. 4 US Marines died. And that's when people began to see this situation is untenable, right? The nationalist feeling is very, very high. And that was what ultimately led to the new Panama Canal Agreement in 1978. One of the interesting things about reading this article in 1964 is it says, it's out of the question that the United States is going to surrender sovereignty over this. Panamanian national control, it's just not possible. Even though it's no longer necessary for national security reasons because the United States has a 2-ocean fleet, it's both economically valuable but also very important for American national prestige to have control over the Panama Canal. So they didn't believe that internationalization was a solution either. They said a possible solution is some kind of international consultation in the future.
They should give the Panamanians $1 million each. That's what they should have done.
However, under the Carter administration, the new agreement was signed, which would give Panamanians control of the canal and fully hand it back to them in 1999. That got 2/3 Senate ratification from a majority of both Democrats and Republicans, even though in 1978 Ronald Reagan was rabble-rousing by saying, we built the canal, it's ours. Ronald Reagan respected the new Panama Canal Treaty and it went back to the Panamanians in 1999.
Why did America give it up?
Sorry?
Why did the Senate vote for it?
Because in 1978, still in the midst of the Cold War, when the United States realized that in order to retain the support of countries in places like Latin America and Africa and Asia, they had to be seen as a bit less hypocritical than they had been seen before. This was also one of the reasons why the government gave way on civil rights back in the 60s. There at that time were a lot of countries very close by, like Cuba and Nicaragua, that could have caused serious problems for the United States. And by the way, now, if the US starts trying to push Panama around, you can imagine that Cuba and Venezuela are going to see some opportunities there. Right. Okay. So Panama takes control back in 1999. I think beginning from about 2007 onwards, completed in 2016, they had a $5 billion expansion of the Panama Canal. So that's paid for by Panama. Panamanian government now says they get 55% of the revenue from the Panama Canal comes from that expansion, not from the original investment that the US made, which, if you're wondering, would work out to about $10.5 billion today. So, it's still like 2/3 of it was paid for by the US government, but Panamanian government says the majority of the revenue now comes from the new bit that we built. Sure. And anyway, fuck off, it's ours. Right. Yeah. We had always wanted it back. This is what the treaty says. Okay, so this brings us to the current context. There is one possible sort of legal opening to Trump, which is the idea that under the terms of that treaty, the US can intervene militarily in order to keep the canal open if there's actually a threat that it'll be closed. There is no threat that it's going to be closed. The pretext that Trump is claiming now is that China is operating the Panama Canal.
Yeah.
Every time you hear Panamanian President Molino talking about this, there is this exasperation. I think he even said, oh, God, this again. No, China is not operating the Panama Canal. There is a Hong Kong-based company in 1997 won the tender to operate a port at each end of the Panama Canal. Yeah. By the way, here's some trivia for all of the trivia-minded. If you travel, Chaz, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean through the Panama Canal, are you going east or west?
Well, the fact that this is trivia suggests to me it's the way that you wouldn't expect, so I would say you're going east.
You are going east. You are going in a south
really weird
easterly direction because of the way that Panama curves around.
That is good trivia.
You end up to the east. So trivia, Triss, I don't know if you can use that in any way. So anyway, yes, there are these ports operated by a Hong Kong company at each end, but there are ports all the way through the Panama Canal that are operated by all kinds of people, including by Americans.
Okay, so let me ask you then, because I was just hanging to make the point about Hutchison. Yeah, that they're the Hong Kong company.
Yeah.
So, do you think? Because I mean, I don't know what's going through Trump's head with this.
Yeah.
Do you think that it is possible that this is simply about him trying to get Hutchison out of the picture and get America administering those ports?
No.
Okay, why not?
No,
because he mentions it all the time. He's obsessed with his China thing.
Yeah. No, because I think he sees himself as a seriously visionary president who is going to change the rules of international politics, the first president in more than 100 years to acquire new territory.
Okay.
I think that is I think he really does think this is an American territory that we stupidly gave up. And he wouldn't be the only one in the US who has that view either. And he has a way of talking about it that would convince a lot of people that, yes, it was stupid to give it up. The China stuff is a pretext for what possible quasi-legal reason could we come up with for taking it back. Now, the end result may end up being, I don't think it will be, but the end result may end up being that Hutchison gets kicked out. So Panama said we're going to have an audit into, into the ports. I doubt that will be the end result. But even if that is the end result, I think that what Trump is actually going for is control of the Panama Canal. What president is going to be remembered for got a Hong Kong company kicked out of a couple of ports in the Panama Canal? I think he is going for the prize. The other thing is the shipping prices. Okay, so he's saying American ships are getting ripped off. It's true that prices have gone up. The Panamanian government attributes this to problems around climate change, the need to pump more water in or something. I don't know anything at all about hydraulic engineering.
Sure.
I don't even know that this is hydraulic engineering that we're talking about.
I think that's a different podcast.
But here's the thing.
If you know what that podcast is called, please tell us, because I will listen to it.
Panama offers the same shipping rates to everyone because that's the terms of the treaty that they signed with the United States. It guarantees neutrality. Yeah. Legally, they couldn't cut a deal with the US for lower shipping prices in the Panama Canal.
Well, just wait till that writer gets his hand on
it. I mean, they could conceivably just lower prices for everybody, and given that the US is 3/4 of shipping through the through the Panama Canal. But once again, even if something like that is the ultimate outcome, I don't think that this is what Trump is aiming for here. So why am I talking about the need to take Trump's territorial acquisition impulses so seriously? First of all, because, as I said, I think that this is really the way that he thinks about the world, the way that he thinks about his own presidency. As I've said repeatedly over the last 10 years, he is not an isolationist. There is one school of thought that considers this isolationism, because the whole idea is move all of these vital assets to within United States territory so you don't have to deal with other countries. I don't read that as isolationism, though, because of the force that would be required to acquire it. And make no mistake, force would be required to take over Panama. Yeah. I think Trump has kind of been hoping that he could intimidate Panama into just handing it over. Same way as I think he was hoping that he could intimidate Greenland into handing it over. But
what is left from Panama if you take away the canal?
Exactly, yes.
Hats. That's all that's left. And hats for dickheads.
Yes. And debt. Mountains and mountains of debt. Yeah, so there's no way they're giving it up. Now, it's been pointed out, Panama doesn't have a standing army. One Panamanian has estimated it would take something like 10,000 US troops to take it over. The US has waged a successful invasion of Panama within our lifetimes. Peppers, do you know that the United States under President George H.W. Bush invaded the entire country in order to arrest one drug dealer? He just happened to be the president of the country, but still, pretty extreme kind of police action there. So naturally, there are fantasies about we could just set in the military and take it over, but there would be counterinsurgency.
Yeah.
There would be a lot of counterinsurgency. You've taken the lifeblood of this country away, the thing that they fought for 100 years, you've taken it away from them. You've left them with nothing. As I said, Venezuela and Cuba, I'm sure, would be very happy to,
Who cares if there's a counterinsurgency, Dave? It's not like there's any infrastructure there that could be destroyed by terrorists.
No, and if there's one thing Americans love, it's fighting battles in jungles against enemies you can't really see. They just think that is tremendous fun. Yeah. So no, it would be a pretty sort of serious, serious proposition. Okay, so. And this brings me to the second point about why I think it's important.
This is the second point?
Yeah, to take these things seriously, which is there has to be a cost for saying shit like this. Okay, there has to be a cost. At the moment, so much of the media, so much of the commentary around it is already preemptively preparing for both of these ideas to fail.
Yeah.
Okay. Almost no one thinks that these are going to happen.
Yeah.
And so the excuses are already being made, right? That this is just a bargaining tactic. Those two sled dog teams. Well, Trump got it. Did Biden get it? No. Trump got it. Maybe there'll be slightly lower shipping rates in the Panama Canal. All he needed to do was threaten an invasion to get it, right?
Okay, so what's the price?
If the price is this. Before he even took the presidency, one of the smallest sovereign countries in the world told him to fuck off. A member of Danish parliament told him to fuck off. The entire country of Greenland told him to fuck off.
Yeah.
Now, this may seem astonishing to say media outlets in the United States have just preemptively rolled over, to Trump. Oh, please take our $14 million and all of our credibility with us. Please let me come to your inauguration, Mr. Trump. Global actors who are probably actually less powerful than the Jeff Bezoses of the world, the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, they're telling Trump to fuck off before he even takes office, right? This is very important for Trump's credibility going forward. He has shown how easy it actually is to say no to him when he throws out one of these ideas. If Greenland and Panama can say no to him, much bigger and more powerful countries can say no to him as well, right? There needs to be a cost to him just throwing around ideas like, I might go to war with a military ally. I might invade a country in order to take its most valuable piece of infrastructure off it. There needs to be a price for this. That price is credibility.
And that price is also Dr. Dave being angry at you.
Yes.
I'm going to send this podcast to Trump.
Yeah.
They'll teach him.
Anyway, so those are my thoughts on the new golden age of territorial expansion.
Fair enough. Let's go for a bit of a change of direction.
Hey! Correspondence Central. Correspondence Central.
Hey! Now, you might be wondering how we could possibly have correspondence given this is the first episode of the year. We got one email. We got a few emails. As I said, lots of people speculating about my life and telling me how it can be improved. But there is one email which I think is worth responding to on air right now, and not in a peep, in a pep.
In a pep.
It's from Andrew, and I'm going to paraphrase. I don't have the exact wording here. Andrew made the point that we have long spoken about a Scaramucci being a unit of time, I believe it's 13 days.
Yeah.
A Scaramucci was employed as part of the Trump administration.
Yes.
While we were away, we saw a Gates, which was shorter than a Scaramucci. It was 11 days from the nomination to Gates pulling out. Now, he was never employed as part of the Trump administration, but it was a step back. But still, it was a definable period of time.
Yeah.
Right? But it didn't end there, because Andrew points out, are we, rather than talking about Gateses and Scaramucci, should we be talking about Ramaswamys? Because Vivek Ramaswamy he didn't even get to be nominated. There was talk of him being part of Doge. And he posed for photos, but he was never actually formally appointed the head or the co-head of Doge before he pulled out. So is that such a thing? Is that a thing now, a Ramaswamy? And if it is a thing, what unit of time is a Ramaswamy?
And by the way, if you very sensibly just took the summer off from thinking about any of this and you've come back and you're like, hang on, where's Vivek? Where's Ramaswamy? There's a reason for this. And that was that over the Christmas break, he made this rather epic post which I would consider a political mistake, right?
Yeah,
so he wants to run for governor of Ohio. Yeah. Okay, he made probably the cardinal mistake of American politics, which is blaming Americans for their own problems.
No, you don't do that.
You do not do that. Okay, so, Trump constantly talks about how the country's in a ditch and it's a ditch full of blood, but he's not blaming Americans for that. He's blaming other countries and the leaders who foolishly got us to this situation by giving away things like canals and giant islands.
He's especially not saying that Americans are doing poorly because Americans are worse than foreigners.
Yes. That is what he said. Because he said Americans are a bunch of nerd-hating troglodytes.
Yes.
Now, given that hating nerds is about as close to the spirit of Trumpism as you can actually get, this was an odd move.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to read it out, but I can remember the bit where I think he really lost it is where he started talking about how this nerd-hating culture, which he said, kids aren't participating in math camps. I'm making stuff up now. They're interested in football instead. But where he really lost it was he started saying this is reflected in TV shows, and he starts going through this like catalogue of 90s sitcoms. And he was saying that when Americans made the decision to elevate some character from Family Ties over Steve Urkel, that's where they lost the race with China. Now, the reason why I can't remember the name of this character was because by the end of Family Ties run, it was only about Steve Urkel. People didn't even know the name of the show. They knew it as Urkel.
Yeah, Family Matters. I've got it now.
Oh, Family Matters. Okay, yeah, see, I'm even getting the name of the show
Here you
wrong.
go. Lockie's got it up for you as well.
Oh.
Here we go. So if you scroll down slightly there, Lockie, yeah, a culture that venerates Corey from Boy Meets World, or Zack and Slater over Screech in Saved by the Bell, or Stefan over Steve Urkel in Family Matters will not produce the best engineers.
There you go. This is a deep insight into Vivek Ramaswamy. He was traumatized by the fact that the characters in these situation comedies didn't get the respect that they deserved from other characters. Anyway, that was what you'd call a political suicide note.
He really was showing, not telling, by demonstrating to Americans that he thinks that they are all a bunch of doofuses, by building his argument around Boy Meets World, Saved by the Bell, and Family Matters. That really says what he thinks of his audience.
Oh, wait, there's more here. Yeah. More movies like Whiplash, fewer reruns of Friends.
Well, that's fair enough. I have to agree with you there, Vivek.
Okay, but yeah, maybe on the Friends point. But Whiplash, I think that movie might have a more ambiguous message than perhaps what Ramaswamy's saying it.
Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't an entirely positive atmosphere.
I don't know that the J.K. Simmons teacher is the hero of Whiplash.
When the drummer was literally bleeding on the drums he was playing because he was being bullied by his teacher, I'm not sure that was necessarily a Mighty Ducks style positive kind of vibe for as an example for all Americans.
If that's the message that he took from us from Whiplash, then anyway,
it didn't work out for Vivek.
That's what it's happened to Vivek.
But apparently he got knocked out of Doge because he was just annoying. That's what the newspaper article said.
I buy that. I will
cop
to a big mistake in my analysis that I made last year. Which was after the joke of a Republican debate that didn't feature Trump.
Yeah.
I believed that Vivek was basically the winner from that debate because he had been the most annoying.
Yeah.
That in an otherwise very undistinguished field, how do you stand out through being annoying? And he was also the one who was positive. He was basically positioning himself as, if Trump dies, I'm the most direct replacement. Yeah, I was terribly wrong about that.
Who would have thought, given how this episode started,
yes,
that you and Elon Musk have something in common, which is that you find Vivek Ramaswamy unbelievably annoying. We finally got unity on something. Okay. You didn't answer the question. What's the unit of Ramaswamy? Is it a negative number?
Yeah, it is.
It's a negative number.
It's negative several days.
Yes. It's probably not. We probably shouldn't use that unit. I want to talk about wildfires now. This is quite old. But look, this is going to come back. The wildfires are going to come back because I'm telling you now, in about 3 weeks' time, we're going to be talking about that aid for LA in a big way.
Yep.
And the topic of conversation is going to be, do they deserve aid or should there be conditions? Let's go through it. Okay. I've got a bit of info here for you.
Yes, yeah.
Right, so the details are, the last I saw was 25 deaths. It might be more now, but this is about 3 days ago.
Yeah.
The ongoing fires, they've damaged or destroyed more than 12,000 buildings. I don't know how. This was about 3 days ago again. 40,000 acres in the neighborhoods of the Pacific Palisades, Eaton and Hearst. 153,000 people forced from their homes. About 39,000 people remained under evacuation orders as of 2 days ago. The two largest fires, the Palisades and Eaton fires, were 56% and 81% contained, respectively. So they're still going. I should say, by the way, when you hear the term contained, it doesn't mean that the entire percentage, like say it's 56% contained. That doesn't mean 56% of it's been put out. It means 56% of the perimeter is being secured. So actually, it's not as good as it sounds.
No.
All right, so just so you know.
And it didn't sound that good to begin with, to be honest.
Yeah,
Like
no,
if you get
that's true.
56% on an exam,
Yeah.
you're not saying killed it.
Yeah, no. Well, if you're a fire, you might say killed it.
Yeah.
For completely different reasons.
Or if you're an American nerd-hating troglodyte who doesn't like Steve Urkel.
Yeah, you might say kill the person who came with that analogy. But another little nomenclature thing I should tell you about, by the way, while I'm talking about containment, is cost. You've seen a lot of numbers thrown around about how much this costs. AccuWeather numbers in particular. AccuWeather last week estimated the cost would be $250 to $270 billion.
Yep.
A word of warning, before you start calling this the most expensive natural disaster of all time, which that number would suggest, because Katrina was only slightly more than $200 billion, you need to realize AccuWeather estimates are a bit weird. They include everything, not just damage to property and the cost of government cleanup, which is what the NOAA, NOAA, the weather group, basically.
Yes.
Their estimates include. AccuWeather estimates include job and wage losses, crop losses, infrastructure damage, interruption of the supply chain, auxiliary business losses, flight delays, evacuations, relocations, the long-term effects of business logistics, transportation, tourism ramifications, even health. Long-term health.
Lost script ideas.
Everything. So AccuWeather, for example, estimated Hurricane Helene's damage at $225 to $250 billion, whereas NOAA estimated it at $78 billion. So it gives you an idea of the scale we're talking about.
Okay.
So in reality, this is more like $80 billion.
Speaking of damage estimates,
Yes.
here's another trivia question. Sorry, this is Australian trivia.
Okay, it's all right. Trivia, Chris.
From
Pay
an
attention.
insurance point of view, which is another way of measuring this,
Yes.
what was the most expensive natural disaster in Australian history?
Would this be the Sydney bushfires?
Nope.
I don't know.
It was the Eastern Suburbs hailstorm of, was that 1998?
Is this because it hit Malcolm Turnbull's house?
It was actually a very traumatic event for people who lived through it. Like, it destroyed a lot of roofs. But anyway,
Okay.
so anyway, just a bit of a, you would have lived through that, right? You would,
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I was alive in 1998.
yeah, and you were living in the Eastern Suburbs.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, well, does Maroubra count?
Yeah, absolutely.
okay,
yeah, that's part of the area that was hit the hardest.
Yeah, I
Yes.
remember.
Yeah.
I remember there were hailstones the size of, well, hailstones.
Yes.
But they were big hailstones.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, so it's not as expensive as people would lead you to believe, but still expensive. I think it's probably the 7th or 8th most expensive disaster in American history, behind 2021's Hurricane Ida and 2012's Hurricane Sandy. Okay, there have been a lot of exotic theories about these fires. Alex Jones's exotic theory was one of the more exotic ones, that the Los Angeles fires are actually part of a larger globalist plot to wage economic warfare and deindustrialize the United States before triggering total collapse. That's one theory. I don't know who's behind that. Probably the WEF. Elon Musk, by the way, responded to that. Do you know how his response was?
What do you say?
True. Dave, that's who we're talking about in the first part of the show. He's not entirely in control of what he says and what he does. But anyway, Charlie Kirk has another theory.
Right.
This is an interesting one about what annoys him most about this disaster.
What annoys Charlie Kirk the most about, other than not being recognised by any of Greenland's homeless population?
Watch and find out.
I'm going to say this just off the cuff before I introduce our guest. Can we please just go away with half the screen during these
Yes, you can
emergency
go away.
briefings to the sign language interpreters? I have nothing against, obviously, people that cannot hear, but there's closed captioning.
I'm surprised by
This
that.
is just over the top. We can't do this. We got to get back to how it used to be. It's just
Over the
too
top.
much.
It's too much. It's too much.
It personally costs Charlie Kirk to watch someone doing sign language. Doesn't matter how many deaf people need to understand what the government is saying about evacuation.
He's got nothing against deaf people.
No.
But chill out, guys. To be fair to Charlie Kirk,
Yes.
he's a guy who really puts a premium on the amount of space that a person has in a shot because he has a very large head.
He does.
And you need to fit that head in without it being cramped by the sign language interpreter.
Yeah.
Think about the head, okay? That's all I'm saying. That's all Charlie's saying.
The Mercator projection makes Greenland look a lot bigger
Oh, my
than it
God,
is.
you're right.
Do you know it's
He's
smaller?
the Greenland of heads.
It's smaller than the space between Charlie Kirk's eyes.
Anyway, that's another theory. Marjorie Taylor Greene's got another theory that they solve this. Have you heard about how she wants to solve the fires?
I'm sure it's going to be very calm and reasoned and grounded in the most advanced meteorological science available.
Correct on all counts. Why don't they use geoengineering like cloud seeding to bring rain down on the wildfires in California? They know how to do it.
She's still looking for that room, isn't she? She's still looking for that room in the building where she works that controls the weather.
Yes, she is. Marjorie, just I know you're a pepper. Just so you know, the critical word in cloud seeding is cloud. If you happen to be in a location where there hasn't been rain for 6 months, you probably don't have any clouds to seed. It's important.
That's true.
Yeah, so there's a few. I'll cut the theories short because none of them are very good. But let's put the theories aside. What we want to focus on is the blame game because this is what's going to be relevant in a few weeks.
Yes,
and there's a lot of blaming going on. Some choice Trump tweets. I'll just pick one of them at random. One of the best and most beautiful parts of the United States of America is burning down to the ground. It's ashes, and Gavin Newscum should resign. This is all his fault. It's all his fault. Newscum's fault. That's typical of what the calm diagnosis and analysis that we've got come from Trump over the last few weeks. So let's go through bit by bit. Water usage. Okay, that's the first area of the blame game, that they're not using enough water. Let's start with Trump's bullshit, and then we'll move on to the credible stuff. Because there's more credible stuff than Trump stuff. You'll be surprised to hear.
Yes.
There's another tweet I'll read out. Truth Social. Governor Gavin Newscum, he's referring to him officially there. Governor Gavin Newscum refused to sign the water restoration declaration put before him that would have allowed millions of gallons of water from excess rain and snow melt from the north to flow daily into many parts of California, including the areas that are currently burning in a virtually apocalyptic way. He wanted to protect an essentially worthless fish called a smelt by giving it less water. It didn't work, but didn't care about the people of California. Now, the ultimate price is being paid. I will demand this incompetent governor allow beautiful, clean, fresh water to flow into California.
You actually sounded a bit like Steve Miller.
Yeah? He is the blame for this. On top of it all, no water for fire hydrants, not firefighting planes. A true disaster. I became a bit English trying to reach for Steve Miller. But that's okay. I'll work on my Steve Miller. It's not the best.
Fuck you and your smelt Newscum.
Just to be clear, I'm sure you'll guess this, but let me confirm for you.
Yep.
The water restoration declaration that Trump referred to doesn't appear to exist. But even though that is totally wrong, sit down. That tweet was based on something true.
Ah! The smelt really is responsible for this? The smelt?
It's not responsible.
The smelt lobby?
It's not responsible. It is not the result of big smelt. but there is a tiny Californian fish called a Delta smelt that is endangered. That is true. In fact, it may be extinct now.
Smelt.
He was right about that as well. And California has limited how much water can be pumped from the Delta in the past to help the fish survive.
Yeah.
That is true. Trump was not lying about that element. And those pumping limits have really pissed off some local farmers, which is why Trump knows about it.
Yeah.
That is true. It's also true that in Trump's first term, he tried to have more water directed to farmers in San Joaquin Valley, and Newsom sued them. Why? To protect endangered species like the Delta smelt fish. That is all true. But Trump's obsession with this for the last 10 years is way out of proportion because pumping limits for fish are nothing compared to pumping limits to protect farmers
Yes.
from salt water getting into their water supply.
Very good point, Jazz.
Yes. That's the first very good point. I've got a few more. This is a pretty important point as well, Dave.
Yeah.
LA doesn't get its water from Northern California.
No, it does not.
And it would have gotten zero water from Trump's plan. That was all going to go to the San Joaquin Valley farmers. Where LA does get its water from has had, quote, the most water stored in its system in the history of the water agency.
Yes.
So this whole line is bullshit. That's the bullshit bit.
Ultimately from the Colorado River, by the way. Yes.
Now, that's all bullshit. The bit which sounds more credible is when we start talking about reservoirs that may not be full. That's when you go, okay, this makes a little bit more sense than the Delta Smelt.
Yes.
Okay. Now, it turns out the reservoirs that were available were full. LA filled its 114 water tanks and reservoirs the week of the fire. They were full at the beginning of the fire. There was never a shortage of water in Southern California. Even during the fire, when there was no water available for firefighting, Southern California did not have a shortage of water. There was water everywhere. But the tanks that they were using, those 114 water tanks, once they were used the first time, they didn't get to refill at the rate that they needed to because water was being used at too high a rate. 4 times the normal demand for water for 15 hours straight. It emptied the water tanks. It killed the water pressure, made it impossible to refill them. That was the problem. It was the system that was the problem, not the storage of water.
Yes.
That was the problem. Okay. Now, the reason I said tanks that were available is because there was one reservoir that was not available that a lot of people are focusing on, and it's Santa Ynez Reservoir. You may have heard about this. It's massive. It's 117 million gallons. It's a massive, massive reservoir, and it was out of action.
How many Warragamba dams is that?
Lucky, get on the calculator. This is the magic of PEP 2025. 117 million gallons, Lucky. Work out that in Warragamba dams, please. It's right near the Palisades as well, this reservoir. In fact, it's uphill from the Palisades. So even with low water pressure, it would be easier to get water from this particular reservoir. So it would have been handy if it was in action. It was completely unavailable. Why? Because it had a tear in its cover, which made it potentially contaminated and therefore unsafe to drink. You might say, who cares whether you drink from it? You want it for fire. Well, the reservoir was originally there as a water supply. So that was important.
Yes.
And so they drained it, and they were going to fix that so then they could drink from it and then also use it as for fires if they needed to. The problem was that was back in February, 11 months ago. And this is where people get angry.
Yeah.
And they go, why? How long does it take to fix a cover? That's pretty shit. Now, the LA government said that to commission the support and resources to implement repairs to Santa Ynez, the LADWP is subject to the city's charters, competitive bidding process, and that requires time. So they're trying to save money.
Look, I sympathise. Got a hole in the wall, the plaster that was caused by a possum.
How long ago was this?
A few weeks ago.
But
we haven't fixed it yet.
There you go. If you had
that could conceivably remain unfixed for the next 11 months.
Yeah, if you were if you had an epidemic of silence.
Yes.
And what you needed was just endless possums to come and make lots of irritating noise. I suppose you could do that because it's a hole.
Yes.
I can't think of an analogy.
We've solved the possum issue. The possums are not coming back.
Okay, right.
Well, yeah, they are because they always do. But
okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, all I'm saying is that they didn't know this fire was coming, but they did know that they're in a fire zone and a fire could come at some point in time. If you want to criticize them for not fixing that reservoir faster, I think that's a legitimate criticism. Yeah. That's fair enough.
Fair enough.
But that's not, we're not using water, or, if only the Delta Smelt wasn't there. Gavin Newscomb is responsible for all this. He had nothing to do with that reservoir. Yeah. Okay, that's a local reservoir. Anyway, what about adding more reservoirs? This is where it gets a little bit more interesting because you think in a wildfire area, they would have added more reservoirs by now. And they tried. In 2014, California raised $7.5 billion with a bond to pay for more water storage. Hundreds of minor projects have been completed as a result of that money, but there are 7 major projects for added water reservoirs and tanks, and so, et cetera, major tanks, that they haven't done yet. That year again was 2014. The 7 major projects are due to be ready in 2027, 2029, 2031, and the biggest will be ready in 2033 and 2035. Now, people go, hang on, that's pretty shit. Why does it take 21 years after you raise the money to build a reservoir? And my answer to that is, have you heard about their high-speed rail? Because that quite literally was meant to go from, was it LA to San Diego, I think, originally?
Yeah.
And now it's going from like Merced to Bakersfield, which I imagine you haven't heard of either of them. And it's due to be completed. This is not a joke. I mean, I didn't look this up.
Yeah.
This is just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I think it's just after 2100. I think it's literally in the 22nd century. Like, it's
God damn.
So,
Why would have visited Bakersfield before that?
maybe the 22nd century was LA to San Diego. But definitely, there was the 22nd century was involved in these calculations in some respect. It's science fiction.
Surely the flying car will be here by
This
then.
high-speed rail is literally a science fiction movie in California. But anyway, my point is they've definitely got construction issues in California. I'm not saying they're beyond criticism.
Yep.
I'm just telling you what the situation is. Okay, so that's the water management. That's a water management situation. Then there's the forest management situation, backburning. Why don't they backburn? Backburning is an issue in California generally. It absolutely is. Scientists think that in prehistoric California, between 4 and 11 million acres burned each year. Today, it's more like, well, between 1999 and 2017, before they started taking this stuff seriously, it averaged 13,000 acres a year. They've upped it a lot since then. I'll give you the numbers in a second. And look, it's true that reviews of backburning, like when you apply for backburning, it takes too long. It takes literally 7 years for a review. Extra if there's a lawsuit, an extra year or two. Even for thinning flammable vegetation, it can take 5 years. Like to go through the process. There's something they need to fix, but that's how it is in California at the moment. Doesn't mean they don't do it though, because lately they had 250,000 acres of backburning in 2023. They are spending $200 million a year on controlled burning now. There's $4 billion more in the budget just for the next few years going forward for this kind of stuff. They're planning to burn 400,000 acres this year. It's not enough, but it's increasing. To say they're not doing it is not true.
A little bit of historical context that I'm sure probably a lot of peppers are aware of was in 1998, Mike Davis, the Marxist historian of Los Angeles, wrote an incendiary article called Let Malibu Burn, which was all about the history of attempted fire prevention in Southern California, which since 1920 had been driven essentially by a zero tolerance policy towards fire. So even though, as you say, same as in Australia, burning is a natural part of the ecosystem and it's completely inevitable. Instead, the way that he put it was all the attention was on ignition and not fuel. As a result, there was sagebrush that was 50 or 100 years old, and he was talking about evidence that the sagebrush burns twice as fast for every 10 years that it's around. So it was making these catastrophic fires inevitable. But apparently enough people read that essay to start taking the concept of backburning seriously. They didn't take what his proposed solution was seriously, which is just, as he says, let Malibu burn. Don't rebuild anything there. But but nonetheless, that's part of the historical context.
That is actually relevant to where I'm going.
Yes.
But I'm not going to get there quite yet. In fact, I think I'm going to split this into two.
Okay.
Because I'm conscious of the time.
Okay.
I know we've got half an hour of you left, Dave. I can talk more about this afterwards. So I'll just finish the backburning section.
Okay.
And then we'll take a little pause on wildfires.
Okay.
Go to Joe Biden.
Okay.
And then we'll come back to that. Okay?
Yes.
I should also say, when you're talking about backburning, you're talking about the forest here. You can't backburn the city.
No.
Obviously. Right. And when you're backburning the forest, the federal government owns 57% of California's forest land. So if Trump wanted to backburn the California forest, he could have. He was the federal government for 4 years, and he's about to be again. 3% of the forest is owned by the state in California. Okay, so but having said that, that's the forest. You don't want to control burn the city. And here the problem is the fire that we're worried about is in the city, not in the forest. Backburning wasn't going to stop this fire. The Palisades fire did start in the wild, but the Eden fire started in the urban areas where you cannot backburn. The urban chaparral, is that how you say it? Chaparral, which is the vegetation in LA. You can't usually do controlled burns of that because it's not controlled. It's uncontrolled burning. That's why you have fires. It's too risky, especially in an urban environment. So the backburning, it wasn't a solution for this particular fire. They have thinned some of the chaparral though. 700,000 acres of fuel reduction in California in 2023 as well. But to put in context, LA County alone has 900,000 acres of protected public lands, 34% of the area. So it could be more, and there's more every year. Experts are divided how much that would have made a difference, though, when the embers have been blown by strong winds and there's plenty of stuff to catch fire in LA County.
Yes. If you haven't already heard the term, Santa Ana winds is the key culprit.
100-mile-per-hour winds. We will be talking about them in part 2 of Wildfires after Dave goes. Now I'm going to skip ahead to Joe Biden. Joe Biden, I want to go through basically his last week or two.
Yes.
Because lots of stuff happened, okay? First of all, his commutations. There were two big ones. Number one, he commuted the death sentences of 37 of 40 prisoners on federal death row.
Yep.
All of them were murderers, and I'll give him credit for that.
Yeah.
That's gutsy.
Yes.
Because, doesn't make you necessarily popular to commute the sentence of murderers.
Yes, but it's consistent with his beliefs.
Yeah. And he did it at Christmas as well, which I suppose, ho, ho, ho.
And he did that because Trump has indicated that he's going to lift the moratorium.
Well, the last time Trump was here, in the last couple of weeks, I think it was, or at least months, there was this fire sale of executions.
Yes.
They ended up executing, I don't remember the numbers, 12, 13. Just went bang, bang, bang right at the end because Trump likes executions. But then there was another commutation where Biden said, today I'm commuting the sentences of nearly 2,500 people convicted of non-violent drug offences who are serving disproportionately long sentences compared to the sentences they would receive today under current law, policy and practice. And he focused on sentencing disparities and historic wrongs in sentencing, like, say, for instance, the disparity between powder cocaine and crack cocaine that led to some people being in jail for decades longer. That was written by Joe Biden.
Yes, it was. Yes, it absolutely was. And if you're wondering exactly what that disparity was, it was a factor of 100.
Yes.
You needed to be caught with 100 times more powder cocaine than crack cocaine in order to get the same sentence.
Yeah. So we have kicked him about that a few times. He's trying to make up for it now.
Yeah.
And altogether, Biden commuted more than 4,000 sentences, which is a huge record. Obama was second with 1,715 sentences.
Wow.
It's the rate of commutation that really stands out, though, Dave.
Yep.
Biden granted about a third of the commutations that were requested of him.
Yes.
Take a guess who's second on the table of the rate of commutations.
I think it's probably Trump.
It's Nixon.
Really?
7%.
Whoa.
Yeah, this is in the last 60 years.
Okay. I mean, Trump did do quite a lot.
Yeah, he did.
He didn't do Tiger King, but he
did 1%.
Yeah.
Obama was next on 5%. Ford was next on 4%. Carter 3%. Donald Trump 1%.
Wow, I'm way off. Okay.
With Bill Clinton.
Yep.
And Reagan. And then George W. Bush was on 0.1%. HW was 0.4%. So anyway, look, I'll give Biden credit. I mean, I'm about to hit Biden pretty hard for a few things. So I'll give him credit here. This is good stuff.
Yes.
Do you know much about the Leonard Peltier commutation?
I wish I knew more about that than I actually do.
I tried to do some research on it. It's actually harder than you think.
Yes. Yeah.
Look, I'll just tell you briefly about it because this was a deal. He was an Indigenous American Indian activist who fought against police brutality towards Native people.
Yes.
He was sentenced in 1975 to the murder of 2 FBI agents on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation.
Yeah.
He's kind of a bit of a cause célèbre amongst activists.
That was a shootout, by the way.
It was. It was a shootout. And he has openly admitted to being part of the shootout.
Yes.
But those 2 guys were shot We don't know if they were shot by him or someone else.
Yeah.
But then someone shot them in the head at close range afterwards. Peltier admits he was part of the shootout. He says he wasn't the one who shot them at close range.
Yeah.
The knock is that it was falsified evidence that got him convicted. I don't know what that evidence is. I was looking for it to express an opinion. I couldn't find it. I think part of the problem was he ran to Canada to flee the authorities, which probably didn't help. But to this day, he's supported by Amnesty International, Desmond Tutu, Coretta Scott King, Robert Redford, picked the odd one out there. but anyway.
This is the thing. Like, a lot of people I respect support him, but I don't know the details of that case.
Yeah. Look, one of his former prosecutors now believes he's innocent. They wrote a letter to Biden asking for him to be pardoned. We were not able to prove that Mr. Peltier personally committed any offence on the reservation. As a result to Mr. Peltier's conviction, now arrest, is that he was guilty of a murder simply because he was present on the reservation that day. He served time more than 46 years on the hands of minimal evidence, a result I strongly doubt would be upheld in any court today. Christopher Wray, who until a week ago was the FBI chief, disagrees. He said, over the last 45 years, no fewer than 22 federal judges have evaluated the evidence and considered Peltier's legal arguments. Each has reached the same conclusion. Peltier's claims are meritless and his convictions and sentence must stand. They didn't stand. Peltier, he never sought a pardon because he said he never did anything wrong, but his sentence was commuted to home detention. And I think people sleep okay at night because he's 80.
Yeah. Also, if Christopher Wray said that, then for Trump it must be wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
Trump should absolutely be supporting this.
I'm not sure Trump sees it that way. But now that's all just leading up to the actual story, which is the pardons, the preemptive pardons on the last day. There are two batches. The first batch was his allies, Dr. Fauci, Mark Milley, who was a Joint Chiefs of Staff, January 6th committee members and their staff, police who testified to the January 6th committee. Now, Biden preemptively pardoned them for anything they did. Some of these people pardoned them from 2014, like 11 years. That's a lot of conduct in 11 years for anything they did. And we're talking about people who you go, I have no idea how these people could be charged, like police who testified to the January 6th committee. That's broad.
Yes.
We're talking pretty broad pardons here, right? Now, Biden said the issuance of these pardons should not be mistaken as an acknowledgement that an individual engaged in any wrongdoing, nor should acceptance be misconstrued as an admission of guilt for any offence. These are exceptional circumstances, and I cannot in good conscience do nothing, even when individuals have done nothing wrong and in fact have done the right thing and will ultimately be exonerated. The mere fact of being investigated or prosecuted can irreparably damage reputations and finances. So he's trying to head Trump off at the pass on those people. The second batch was his family. His brother Francis, his other brother James Biden's wife Sarah, his sister Valerie's husband John T. Owens. Biden said they hadn't done anything wrong either. He said, my family has been subjected to unrelenting attacks and threats, motivated solely by a desire to hurt me, the worst kind of partisan politics. Unfortunately, I have no reason to believe these attacks will end. I believe in the rule of law, and I'm optimistic that the strength of our legal institutions will ultimately prevail over politics, but baseless and politically motivated investigations wreak havoc on the lives, safety, and financial security of targeted individuals and their families. Even when individuals have done nothing wrong and will ultimately be exonerated, the mere fact of being investigated or prosecuted can irreparably damage their reputations and finances. Dave, what do you think of these pardons?
I don't like them.
Yep. Tell us why.
For three reasons.
Yeah.
First is it makes these people look like they've done something.
Yes.
When I think for the most part they haven't. Second, if some of them have done something, then this rules out any facing justice. I don't know if these, if any of these people have done something.
James Biden.
Yeah.
Who is almost certainly committed some kind of fraud or financial crime. He's a dodgy guy.
Third, it's preemptive surrender.
Yeah.
It's basically saying the Justice Department from now on is going to, not just the Justice Department, the whole justice system is going to be useless from now on.
Yeah.
Now, okay, it's true. Trump is going to weaponize the Justice Department.
Yep.
It's true that the person who is going to end up as Attorney General is going to be a complete pro-Trump hack.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that the entire legal system of the United States is just going to be transformed into an engine of persecution of Biden's enemies. Okay, the best chance that liberals, that Democrats, that Biden's allies have over the next 4 years is that a lot of, legal institutions in the United States are designed to gum things up.
Yeah.
Right. They are, Trump knew exactly how to work that when he was facing prosecution. They are designed for people to be able to object, obstruct, throw up obstacles at every single point along the way. There are also a lot of incredibly principled people working in the American legal system, and I don't exclude from that a lot of people that Trump appointed as judges and lawyers who have previously just not just gone along with with what he says. Yes, the situation can look very bleak to Liberals with a 6-3 Conservative majority in the Supreme Court, with Trump openly weaponizing it. But this is preemptive surrender. This is saying if Trump wants to go after these people, he's just going to be able to put them in jail, even if they've done nothing. What we saw last time around was if you try to mount investigations into people who've done nothing, you get nowhere.
But what do you say in response to people saying, we're not saying they're going to go to jail, but the process is the punishment. Making someone spend 2 years of their life defending themselves against investigations that may lead to charges is in itself going to destroy their lives.
Look, I understand that. I sympathise with that. I don't think that it's worth putting that over the integrity of the legal system itself. That's a risk in any legal system. The people he's pardoned, for the most part, they are public figures. They are figures who are used to being scrutinised in all kinds of ways. They are, for the most part, going to be people who are very legally well defended.
Yep.
They are, for the most part, people who are going to have the resources to defend themselves.
Anyone who Biden pardons can be the subject of a legal defense fund.
Yeah.
That would be well funded.
Yeah. Like these are people who are going to be treated as heroes on their side of politics. So look, I can understand what he was doing, especially with his own family, but I don't like this.
I'd agree with everything you said, and I'll add a few more. Just to elaborate on your point about it giving up. What this is actually doing is legitimizing Trump's way of conducting himself.
Yes, absolutely.
It's about personal power politics over institutional norms.
Yes.
Biden's meant to be the norms guy, right?
Yeah.
This is might is right. This is saying that that the rule of law doesn't matter anymore. Yep. What matters is who's in power.
Yes.
If you're in power, you're golden. If you're not in power, you're under the pump. Trials are just pas and displays of power to the other side. That's what this is saying.
Yeah.
This is the way, in my view, towards cynicism and authoritarianism. I know we're on that path anyway, but you're not going to win, in my view, by escalating that little bit more.
Yeah.
If you get in an arms race of abuse of power,
Yep.
you're not going to end up in a good place.
Nope.
And to be honest, I might elaborate on this another time. I think Biden contributed to that arms race I just described a whole lot more than Democrats might like to acknowledge.
Yes.
I think that the last 10 years has been terrible for the arms race of abuse of power. And this is one more example. And we got to find a way to get off this path. This path is heading nowhere good.
Yeah.
So that's my elaboration on your other point. But I'll just say a few other things. First of all, I just want to, you acknowledged it, but I want to back over a little bit, understanding where Joe Biden's coming from with this, which is I completely concede that Trump's pardoning was already appalling long before this.
Yes.
Of the 237 grants of clemency by Trump, only 25 came through the Office of the Pardon Attorneys process. The rest were people who had money or people who had connections to him, right? At one point in time, 84 of the first 94 Trump pardons had a personal or political connection to the president. It was shockingly corrupt. A lot of these people paid lobbyists to lobby for them, tens of thousands of dollars. It was corrupt. Okay, so I acknowledge that.
Yes.
So saying, Biden wrecked pardons. No, he didn't. They were wrecked before he came along.
Absolutely were.
But this is not helping.
No.
Right? Yeah, and also incredible hypocrisy, we should say, with Joe Biden. He was asked in 2020 about the prospect of Trump issuing preemptive pardons. And this is what he said.
President Trump is reportedly considering a wave of preemptive pardons. Does this concern you? All these preemptive pardons?
Well, it concerns me in terms of what kind of precedent it sets and how the rest of the world looks at us as a nation of laws and justice. You're not going to see in our administration that kind of approach to pardons.
Until 2 weeks ago, Biden was saying he wasn't going to pardon people who hadn't done something wrong. And then just like he maintained that the trial and process against Hunter, for instance, was fair right up to the moment he pardoned Hunter because he said that the process had been rigged and was politicized. Let's be fair to Biden. Trump has spoken about retribution too many times to ignore. That is true. Trump has a track record. He tried to get Hillary Clinton behind the scenes a number of times.
Yes.
In his first term.
Yep.
Long after she was irrelevant. He didn't forget about it. He kept going after her and he was thwarted by his underlings, basically. All right? His supporters want this. His supporters are super G'd up to get the inverted commas Biden crime family, especially Milley and Fauci. They want them so bad. They can taste it. And they were so angry by the pardons online. And that's why.
Yeah.
So, his supporters would have G'd him up. There's no doubt. And the architecture is already there to get these guys. They've got a special counsel for Hunter Biden. They've got a House committee looking into the Bidens. They've got a Senate committee looking into Fauci. It'd be so easy to keep going. So, yes, the threat is real. I completely concede that. Biden is right about the threat. But there's, first of all, your points. Then there's the precedent value, which he didn't mention. Adam Schiff, I think he nailed this. He got pardoned, by the way. And this is what he said about that pardon.
I don't think it's a good idea, and I would urge the president not to do that. First of all, I think it's unnecessary, but I also think it's unwise. I don't want to see a precedent where you start to have presidents on the eve of leaving office issuing blanket pardons to people of their own party or of their own administration. That, I think, would tend to encourage people to feel they're not beholden to the law because the outgoing president will give them a prospective pardon. So I think it's unwise policy, and I would urge the president not to go down that road.
That is the wisest thing the Hamburglar has ever said.
It's classic Hamburglar, I think. No, that was great. And I think there's a real concern this does just become standard practice. It will create a class of people, political goons, who are simply above the law.
Yep.
And you might say, well, look, Trump would have pardoned his friends and family in 2028 anyway, even without Biden. Well, you know what? You might be right, but he didn't do it in 2020.
No, he didn't.
That clip I just played before of Joe Biden was him being asked in 2020 about Trump doing preemptive pardons because they were talking about Trump doing that. And Trump knew lawsuits and charges were coming for January 6th because he'd just been impeached about it. So he knew it was coming. And his allies were asking for pardons.
Yeah.
And he didn't give them to him. So maybe he wouldn't have. We're never going to know because now this has been done. This is going to set a precedent. And I can just hear people saying, well, if Trump does it anyway, then who cares if Biden did it? The precedent's set. Well, the thing is, it actually, whether it's fair or not, it matters more that Biden's done it because it takes two parties to set a precedent.
Absolutely.
When one party does it, that person's aberrant. When the other party does it, they've both got skin in the game. It keeps on happening.
Yep.
Now Biden's done it. We've got a situation where it's up to Trump to guard the norms of pardoning.
Yeah.
Who trusts Trump to be the one to hold up standards? Because now we're relying on him. Otherwise, it just becomes the new precedent. And that is a concern to me. I don't trust Trump. It also sets up an expectation now. I don't know if you saw Alexander Vindman's wife, Rachel. You might recall Vindman was he testified against Trump in his first impeachment. This is what his wife had to say when the pardons came out. Breaking. My husband is on a list of enemies and they talk about him all the time, but he wasn't offered shit. She followed it up with, whatever happens to my family, know this. No pardons were offered or discussed. I can't begin to describe the level of betrayal and hurt I feel. The expectation is now there.
Yep.
You get pardoned. There's a lot of MAGA Twitter discussion right now about Mayorkas because he didn't get pardoned and he's the one they hate the most. So now now people go, well, what about Mayorkas? Well, Jack Smith, Politico's just wrote an article. What about Jack Smith? Why didn't he get a pardon? Why didn't Judge Machan get a pardon? And they're good questions because now we've set a precedent.
Yep.
That's the new norm. And one more thing. This is just by and by. This actually, in a way, could make it worse for the actual pardonees themselves.
Could.
Because, yeah, there's no more legal consequences, but do you think that's the only way Trump can get them? He might not be able to pursue him legally, but this won't stop committee hearings.
No.
This won't stop perjury traps. This won't stop harassment by the IRS. This won't stop harassment by other government bodies. It won't stop Trump supporters harassing them. All of these things I just said are now more likely.
Yes.
Because these people play a dominance game and they just got beaten in one round of the dominance game. So now they're going to come back harder and they're more determined to escalate. This is how the arms race works. So anyway, so that's my thought. That's why even though I understand Joe Biden, I'm sympathetic to him, I hate these pardons.
Yes, yeah.
Anything else to add to that?
No.
Okay. Dave, you got 10 minutes left. I'm going to throw some headings to you.
Yep.
You pick which one you want to talk about,
Yes.
okay? All right. The oligarchy speech.
Let's do Biden's farewell address. That is very
the oligarchy
important.
speech. Okay, let's go. Dave. Oh, let's watch it.
Yep.
I want to warn the country of some things that give me great concern. This is a dangerous and that's a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of a very few ultra-wealthy people. And the dangerous consequences if their abuse of power is left unchecked. Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead. You know, his farewell address, President Eisenhower spoke of the dangers of the military-industrial complex. He warned us then about, and I quote, the potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power, end of quote. 6 decades later, I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech-industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country as well. Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation, enabling the abuse of power. The free press is crumbling. Editors are disappearing. Social media is giving up on fact-checking. The truth is smothered by lies told for power and for profit. We must hold the social platforms accountable to protect our children, our families, and our very democracy from the abuse of power. Meanwhile, artificial intelligence is the most consequential technology of our time, perhaps of all time. Nothing offers more profound possibilities and risks for our economy and our security, our society, for humanity. Artificial intelligence even has the potential to help us answer my call to end cancer as we know it. But unless safeguards are in place, AI could spawn new threats to our rights, our way of life, to our privacy, how we work and how we protect our nation.
This was a speech that self-consciously invoked Eisenhower's 1961 farewell speech, warning about the military-industrial complex.
Yes.
The parallels are a lot deeper than Biden realizes, and not in a good way. Okay, so when Eisenhower warned about the military-industrial complex, he, more than anybody, helped to create the military-industrial complex. He was aware of this. Back when he was still a general in 1946, he was one of the first people calling for enhanced cooperation between the Defence Forces, who would become the Department of Defence in 1947, and the manufacturing sector. Right? He was calling for a military-industrial complex. He helped to build it as president. But even as president, he was always worried about what that was going to do. In 1953, he made a speech which I think should be even better known than his farewell address, called the Cross of Iron speech, where he talked about the cost of every bomber, the cost of every tank, and what could be built instead of that with that money, how many schools, how many hospitals. And he said, this isn't freedom, this is humanity hanging from a cross of iron. So he was both self-consciously creating the military-industrial complex, but also more worried than anybody about its consequences. And that just accelerated in the second half of his presidency, especially after the Soviets got Sputnik, shockingly, into the atmosphere before some sphere above the atmosphere. I am not a spheres person. Before the Americans did, that triggered a lot of national anxiety, more and more money getting poured into defense-related research and development. And this was the context that Eisenhower was talking about. Now, in that speech, he actually said basically the military-industrial complex was necessary. He said it was necessary to have such a force of arms ready that no one would ever be tempted to attack the United States. But he said, we must be on guard against the unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, of the military-industrial complex. So in other words, you're saying it's necessary to have it there, but we've got to be on guard against its influence. Now, it's worth noting, Eisenhower himself was the quintessential embodiment of the military-industrial complex. He came from a fairly humble background in Kansas, but he was part of a graduating class at West Point that included 59 generals, many of whom went on to become major corporate figures. He had very strong ties with the oil industry. He became the president of Columbia University, where his academic colleagues didn't like the oil industry very much, but it set a really good base for his run for the presidency. So in other words, he circulated between the military, the corporate world, and the government in exactly the way you would expect of the military-industrial complex.
I know we're in a rush, but I just have to acknowledge that you happen to remember the number of generals. That's incredible.
Yes.
I don't know how you even found out that number in the first place.
I wrote an article about this one.
Still,
yes.
you remembered it.
Yeah.
Okay. Full credit.
So, now, what happened after Eisenhower left office? Everyone was worried about the military-industrial complex. So, did they prevent the military-industrial complex from exercising warranted or unwarranted influence? No, they did not. Okay, fast forward to Biden.
Yes.
Talking about
the tech-industrial complex.
The tech-industrial complex in exactly the same way. Saying, basically, it's great that we have it, We need to win the AI war with China. AI could cure cancer. Fuck, glorified autocorrect is not curing cancer, Joe. But anyway, basically saying exactly the same thing. Like, we need to have this tech sector, but we need to be on guard against its influence. And let us make no mistake about who is responsible for the American tech sector being so huge and so powerful. The federal government built Silicon Valley. They may depict themselves as a bunch of freedom-loving, libertarian entrepreneurs. Silicon Valley was built on defense contracts. Literally, from 1968 onwards, DARPA played a huge role in the development of Silicon Valley companies. Most of these companies started out they only survived because of defense contracts. If we look at someone like Peter Thiel, all of his by far his most significant ventures were war on terror era defense contracts. The reason why Elon Musk exercises so much influence is because of Starlink. Okay, so it's the US government that empowered the tech sector. And again, we have a president who, Biden didn't build the tech oligarchy in the same way that Eisenhower built the military-industrial complex, but he didn't exactly stand in its way.
No.
And the Democratic Party has certainly helped to build it, especially when they regarded the tech sector as natural allies. So here you have this president saying, again, we've got this incredibly powerful thing which we really love and we really need, but we've got to be on guard against its warranted or unwarranted influence. The lesson from Eisenhower's speech and the decades that followed should have been, you can't create a thing this powerful and then expect it not to exercise political power, especially when it's empowered with this ideology that tech has the answers to everything, right? To everything from medicine to climate change to national security. Democrats have helped to promote that idea. And this is why you get these massive egoed tech executives who, in the end, what distinguishes the successful tech executives from the thousands of unsuccessful ones who had ideas that just failed? A lot of the time it is luck. But what they come up with is the idea that we have the answers to everything and that we can ignore all other forms of expertise. Let's get rid of everybody in the government who actually knows what they're doing. So, look, I would say, as I say, the parallels are deeper than Biden realizes between these two speeches.
I think that's an excellent point. And I should add that that like you just intimated, 4 years ago, Biden didn't have a real problem with the tech industrial complex
Not
at all when they were under his thumb.
Yes.
And even now, he's still clearly conflicted because if you were going to do a dot point summary of his speech there, at least part of it was we need to fear the power of these tech overlords, and they should also be regulating everyone's speech as well. Like, he can't quite work out what his position is.
Yes.
There's a certain contradiction here, and like a lot of people have also pointed out. I mean, we're focusing on the tech side, but we're talking about the power of the oligarchy.
Yeah.
A lot of people have talked about the fact that under Biden's administration, a lot of people got a lot richer.
Absolutely.
It wasn't just these dudes.
No.
Like Matt Stoller's tweet, I thought made the point quite well. In 2020, there was one person worth over $100 billion. Today, at the end of Biden's term, there are 16 of them.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily Biden's fault, but it's worth acknowledging.
Absolutely.
That this process has been going for some time. I just want to make one other just random point, which is not really to do with what you're talking about, but it's on this topic, which is with the misinformation thing. There is an assumption everyone's making that with Facebook not using fact checkers anymore, at least in America, they're using fact checkers outside America, that necessarily means that misinformation is going to thrive. And that's not necessarily the case because they are going to be doing a community notes of their own. And I've got to say, I actually think community notes has been astoundingly successful on Twitter. The problem with community notes is not community notes. It's that there isn't enough of community notes. That, I don't think I've ever seen a community notes where I went, wow, that's really crap. They're usually really good, succinct fact checks, but they're crowdsourced in the same way Wikipedia is and all the rest of it. They're usually spot on and are more trusted, I think, than most fact checks because people know that they're crowdsourced. And I'm not saying it's the answer, but I'm just saying, and there's also more of them. They come I wish there were many more of them, but there are so many more because it's crowdsourced. There are so many more community notes than there are fact-checked articles written by journalists. And so I actually think but depending on how they're administered, of course.
Yes.
If they're administered well, I think community notes can be an upgrade on fact checkers. I mean, we'll see. We'll see how Facebook does it.
Yes.
But I think that community notes is the only thing that Elon Musk didn't fuck up on Twitter, essentially, I would say. But anyway, you've got to go.
I got to go. So happy New Year, Peppers. Shinyan Kwai La. And see you next week.
I'll see you next week, Dave. You guys don't go anywhere because, Lockie, do you want to slide in? Yeah, you slide in. We'll just talk a little bit more amongst ourselves. I'll see you after the white flash with Lockie in the hot seat. Hello, Lockie. Welcome back.
Hi, Chaz. Thanks for having me. I'm here as your pseudo Dave.
Yes, you are. I just don't like talking to myself, and this is not going to be a full peep for Chaz Unleashed / Planet Extra / whatever. It's not going to be one of them. I just, given that this is the first week back, and we've got so much to talk about, I just feel like I just can't in good conscience end this after 2.5 hours. We just got to get some value for the Peppers. Not Dave, pseudo Dave.
No, this isn't an Unleashed. It is an Unleashed with a noddy beside you.
Yeah. So basically, you don't have to say a word. For those listening, you might not even know Lockie's here after this moment.
No, you probably won't.
You can just nod if you want.
I do have notes, actually.
Yeah?
They just say, it says, believe in yourself.
Yes.
And watch the hand gestures.
That's excellent advice.
Cool. And with that, I'll restrict myself to nods.
Okay, so I will continue on with some of Biden's last moves. We're not going to do all of them. We'll save some of them for Dave, but let's just get a few of these out of the way. That's a great nod there, Lockie. Okay, so what we're up to is U.S. Steel. Now, I told you guys about the Nippon Steel decision last year in a Chaz Unleashed. You might recall Japanese company Nippon Steel wanted to buy US Steel for $15 billion. They were offering the most by a mile out of all the bidders. And they offered heaps of guarantees to respect union contracts, to invest massively in upgrading US Steel's operations. It was a perfect bid. It seemed like a win-win to me at least, but the unions didn't trust them. Number one, maybe rightly so, I don't know. The second biggest bidder was an Ohio steel company that had a lot of powerful friends, and they really, I think, undermined the Japanese bid.
Pun intended, undermined?
Oh, no, not at all. Wow.
No.
There you go. See, when you speak, it's quality. Well done.
As you were.
And predictably, Biden blocked the sale in his last week, saying it was a threat to national security, which is garbage because US Steel doesn't make the kind of steel that the military use, number one. Number two, it makes so little steel it wouldn't matter who controlled it anyway. And number three, Japan is one of America's closest military allies anyway. So I don't see the security risk. That was classic Biden-Trump protectionism in my view. But anyway, I hate that. But the reason I'm bringing this to you is not only do I want to just tell you the end of the story, because it was such a great little story I spun for you a few months back about US Steel. I knew you were all hanging to find out what happened. But also there's a cute little sting in the tail, which was you could tell exactly how much Biden cared about this deal. Didn't care. You can tell he put zero thought into this one. Because the whole executive order, this is not an exaggeration, was a copy-paste job from a previous presidential order about a Chinese real estate deal. Now, how do I know that? Maybe Biden just likes to use the same terms when he's talking about security arrangements and deals and blocking sales. Well, they left the original title. The title was Regarding the Acquisition of Certain Real Property of Cheyenne Leads by Minioni Cloud Computing Investment ILP. Does everyone in that administration have cognitive decline? What is going on? Oil bans. Biden banned new oil and gas projects across 625 million acres of ocean across the east and west coasts, the Gulf of America, you got to get that right, and also the Bering Sea. I have no idea why he did that. Like, Trump was taking over a week later. He reversed it in like 5 seconds. So I don't know what the point of that was, but that's something that Biden did. Also, he rescinded Cuba's designation as a state sponsor of terrorism, which... to be fair, I'm not sure Cuba is a state sponsor of terrorism. That's probably a reasonable thing to do. But Trump also immediately reversed that. I mean, if he wasn't going to do that, Marco Rubio would have had an aneurysm. Marco Rubio has always had a real hard-on for sanctions from Cuba. I think his family is from Cuba. And so it's personal for Marco Rubio. But whatever. Trump just reversed it immediately. Anyway, okay. Also, Biden announced he was extending temporary protection status to foreign nationals from Ukraine, El Salvador, Venezuela, and Sudan. You might go, well, who cares? 4 fairly random countries. Yes, but they are 4 countries where most of the temporary protection status comes from. There's 1 million of them in America. And when I say temporary protection status, what I mean is if you're from a country where things are screwed up and the America agrees that it's not really safe for you to be in your country, you can stay in America for a couple of years. For 2 years, they'll give you a work permit. You can live like a normal person. You don't live in a prison. You can build a life, and then after 2 years, you go back home. That's the theory.
Sounds generous.
Does sound generous, doesn't it? As it turns out, it's even more generous than you think because it should be called PPS. No one goes home.
Oh.
It's permanent protection status. There are El Salvador, for instance. 250,000 people are from El Salvador in the temporary protection status program. They're there from, I think, 2001 or 2000 from an earthquake, and they're still there.
That's nuts.
Every 2 years, it just gets rolled over. It just gets extended and extended and extended for another 2 years, for another 2 years, for another 2 years. And this is what pisses off conservatives. Like the people who are worried about immigration, they don't like this.
Right. Okay.
because they go, you know what, we'll put up with them for 2 years. Why are they still here? Especially given El Salvador. You might not know this, Lockie.
I probably don't.
Do you know El Salvador has a lower crime rate than America?
No, I definitely didn't. No, that's a little stats nugget.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right.
Stats Nugget.
That's the best nodding, Lockie. That's good. a little surprise stats nugget there. Yeah, they've got a lower crime rate than America. And also, in the last few years, El Salvadorans have been deported back to El Salvador from America, like 7,000 of them. Yet the 250,000 El Salvadors who are still in America under temporary protection status, theoretically, it's not safe for them to go back. And that really pisses off conservatives.
Right.
Anyway, but so they got this temporary protected status program with 1.3 million people in it. And 1 million of them just were extended for another 2 years to the end of 2026 by Biden. And that really pissed off conservatives. Yeah, really.
I think I'm getting the hang.
Yeah, because they were like, oh, come on, you're so obviously just trying to thwart Trump here. Because this is what happened in his first term. They had, at that point in time, I think they had about 300,000 temporary protected status people. And Trump wanted to get rid of them immediately, but he had to wait till the clock wound down because the courts wouldn't let him get rid of them immediately because the court said these people they've relied on your promises that they have 2 years. So they couldn't get rid of them immediately. And then when they tried to get rid of them after 2 years, then the Democrats and the immigration activists, they were litigious and they delayed it and Trump ended up running out of time. And then Biden came in and then just dropped all the court cases. And so those 300,000 people got to stay another 4 years.
Nice.
And in the meantime, Biden added another million in the last 4 years. So once again, really pissed off conservatives. So that's where they're at the moment. Trump has, of course, immediately ordered for all their statuses to be revoked, and we're on the same ride again.
All over.
Yeah,
cool. Okay.
It's going to go to the court. The court's going to make him wait 2 years. There's going to be litigation, and we'll see what happens. But anyway, that's what Biden did. He basically just made Trump angry with this. Nicotine. The FDA introduced a proposed rule, which might be sometime in the future when that's finalized, probably a few years, to reduce the nicotine in cigarettes by 95%.
That's significant.
That is significant.
Wow.
That they say that will make smoking less addictive. Yes, I think it probably would. It's not just cigarettes, cigars as well, pipes. 95% less nicotine. I don't know the numbers of milligrams of nicotine that are in normal cigarettes, but they're talking about 0.7 of a milligram of nicotine per gram of tobacco. You might be wondering, why don't they just go zero nicotine? If they want to stop it being addictive, just have no nicotine. The answer is...
Why don't they?
Because they're not allowed to.
Oh.
Because federal law says that the FDA is not allowed to just ban a tobacco product or require the reduction of nicotine yields to zero without Congress.
And why is that?
Well, because the FDA is not meant to pass the effectively legislation.
Okay.
Like that's a big deal. To ban cigarettes is something that's Congress's job.
Right.
Not people who haven't been voted in, who are just random busybodies who aren't accountable to anybody. Like the agencies are not meant to have that much power. The agencies are meant to interpret what Congress says.
Right.
And then enact it.
Okay, cool. No, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So so when they're saying big, the agencies aren't meant to do it. And in this case, the Congress deemed that big enough that the agency should not have that power. That's a congressional power. So what the FDA have done is just said, well, screw you, Congress. I'm going to do everything but get rid of the nicotine completely.
Do you think that they regret stopping at 95% when they could have gone to 99.9%?
Yeah, they could have. Yeah, they could have done a bit of a sort of Crazy Barry's kind of rug sale kind of thing. Like just gone 99.999% off. They could have done something like that, but they didn't. They didn't. They were
Sent
restrained.
Big Tobacco walking out the door.
Exactly. Anyway, so that's what they've done. Where the smokers go, if that happens, well, they don't go to the hospital, so that's a nice change. No, they're not going to go necessarily to vaping, because you might go, they're just going to go to vaping, because in America, all flavors except for tobacco flavour and menthol flavour are banned from vapes. So you don't have like rock melon flavour and stuff like that. At least not supposed to.
Sure.
They probably sell them on the black market.
I was going to say, are their bans as effective as the ones in New South Wales?
Probably.
Yeah, okay. Cool.
Yes. But anyway, but what they do like is Zins. Do you know about Zins? Are you aware of Zins? I know your parents are.
I am aware of Zins, actually.
Okay. Yes. Well, yeah, they've just allowed 20 more products of Zins on the market.
Right, okay.
So Zins are about to take off. And if they didn't allow them before, they're about to, because all of Trump's podcasting buddies love Zins.
Them, that's true.
For those who don't know what I'm talking about with Zins, even though Lockie does, I should explain. Zins are like tobacco pouches that you stick in between your lip and your gum. Whether in 20 years' time people go, oh, they gave me tongue cancer or whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say, presumably it's a product for if you want oral cancer much faster than the standard method of cigarette.
Yeah, I got no idea. We don't know, but I do know that that Don Jr. is doing the experiment for us as the pod bros.
If that's a bullet that Alex Jones wants to fall on, I'll let him take it.
Exactly. So anyway, so that's probably where they're going to go. But we'll see if Trump wants to go with this or not. If he doesn't want to go with this, then it's not going to happen because it's going to take years more for the FDA to actually push this through. His first FDA chief back in 2017, Scott Gottlieb, actually, this was his idea.
Oh, wow.
So Trump might go for it. I don't know. I mean, Trump is, remember, a clean living kind of a guy. He's got plenty of vices, but they're not smoking and drinking. So who knows? Red dye. Well, we're talking about banning things. The FDA has banned red dye number 3 because it's a potential carcinogen. Now, I don't know if you guys at home know MAHA. That's the group that RFK Jr. is now in charge of, the Make America Healthy Again.
Yes.
They love this. They love banning of red dyes. To be honest, I understand where they're coming from. Red dye number 3 is a colouring that is used in
red
junk food. Yeah, red junk food, essentially.
Red cordial. Sweet.
Yeah. It's not the only one. There are plenty of red dyes. They can use others. This is the cheapest one.
Sure.
So what we're talking about is we're fighting for the right to have a slightly cheaper red colour on your junk food. That's what we're talking about here. Doesn't really matter.
Aim for the stars.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. So I kind of like that the FDA are going to cracking down on this if there's the chance it might be carcinogenic. If there's a chance. I should say, though, for the record, the Junk Science account on Twitter did a real number on this one. So I'll show it to you that let's just say the fears about cancer might not be overly well-founded.
The claim that Red 3 causes cancer rests on a single study done 37 years ago in 1987. In that study, lab rats of both sexes were fed food containing a range of doses of Red 3 for a period of 30 months. At the highest dose tested, and we'll get to that in a moment, a statistically significant number of male rats developed thyroid adenomas. The vast majority of the rats did not get adenomas, but the number that did was statistically significant for the males. So does that prove that Red 3 causes cancer? No, not even close. First, while an adenoma is a tumor, it is a benign tumor, not a malignant one, so none of the rats actually got a dangerous cancer from the experiment. I could stop there, but I won't. The adenomas only occurred at a statistically significant level in the male rats, but male rats are known to be a poor model for studying thyroid effects in humans. Their biology is just too different. Rats are not little people after all, and this study result is just absolutely meaningless for human cancer risk, even if any malignant cancer had occurred, which it did not. So to recap, we have one very old study. There was no malignant cancer. The only effects were in males, and so were entirely irrelevant to humans, and the effects were only observed at the highest dose. How high was that highest dose? This is my favorite part. It took a little bit of research to make this calculation, but I was finally able to find enough data to express the highest dose in a non-scientist friendly manner. I'm going to use jelly beans made with Red 3. Since the food additive scare is children-based, I calculated the dose for a child weighing 30 kilograms or 66 pounds. So let's assume for the sake of argument that the rat study result was directly applicable to humans. The child dose of Red 3 equating to the highest dose the rats received is the same as a child eating 184,000 red jelly beans per day. That's about 460 pounds of red jelly beans per day, an amount 7 times more than a 66-pound child weighs. And they have to eat those 184,000 red jelly beans every day for 30 months. As you can see, from soup to nuts, the notion that red 3 is a cancer risk is without a basis in reality.
I love that guy. More of that guy, please.
More of that guy. Chaz, you are that guy. He does junk food science instead of PEP.
I'd like to think that I've got slightly more facial range than he does. But look, I'll take that as the ultimate compliment. I should say, it's not really a big deal either way, whether it causes cancer or not. Because like I said, the stakes are pretty bloody low on this chemical. But it's just nice to get the facts out, I reckon. And there'll be plenty more of this kind of thing when RFK takes over the health services department as well. And one more section I want to talk about. I'm going to leave ceasefires because I know Dave wants to talk about the ceasefire. I'm going to leave TikTok because I know Dave wants to talk about TikTok.
Well, there goes the only topic I could have helped with.
Do you want to talk about TikTok?
No, I'll leave Dave.
I'll do one more, which I know Dave's not interested in, which is, I did talk about this on Planet America, but for those who don't watch Planet America, I'll go into slightly more detail here. It's the 28th Amendment. Now, the 28th Amendment did not exist until recently, and I would argue still doesn't exist. It's the Equal Rights Amendment. Now, the Equal Rights Amendment is basically equality of rights under the law on account of sex. So no sex discrimination, essentially. Sure. Okay? Now, the law kind of takes care of that anyway these days, but the law can change. There's no reason why in the future the Congress could legislate legislate sex discrimination, and the Supreme Court should go, yeah, you know what? Forget the 14th Amendment. This is really good shit. That could happen. And so that's why you want an Equal Rights Amendment.
Sure.
Okay? But it hasn't happened. Let me talk you through it. 1972 was when they came up with this idea. They passed it through Congress, and then they tried to ratify it. Now, to ratify a congressional amendment, you need to get 2/3 of the states to pass it. That's 38 states out of the 50. And Congress set a deadline when that's going to be. At least that's what the Supreme Court says is meant to happen. They set a deadline for 1979 for the 38 states to ratify this amendment. Congress ended up extending that deadline to 1982. Okay, so they had 10 years to get 38 states to agree to this amendment. I'm talking about the congressional, the congressional houses.
No, thank you.
States. Yeah. Okay, so by 1982, there were 35 states ratifying it, not 38. And the news got worse. 5 of the states that had already ratified it unratified it. Because there was there was a bit of a pressure campaign from, I think it was Phyllis Schlafly from memory, a conservative in the late 70s, going, what's this all about? And so they actually changed their minds, some of these conservative states. I don't know if they could unratify once they'd ratified. Maybe they weren't allowed to. In the end, it doesn't really matter because there weren't 38 states anyway. Jump forward to Trump now. Under Trump, there was, you might recall, a bit of a focus on women.
I recall.
Yes. There was concerns about his attitudes towards women, and it was a real sort of, it was a boom time for women's rights.
For or against?
Well, both.
Okay.
It was both in that some people were against the women's rights movement. And the women's rights movement, as it turns out, was very for women's rights.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And as part of this push, they resurrected the idea of the Equal Rights Amendment. And so those 3 states, which at the time didn't pass the amendment, they passed it under Trump.
Sure. Oh.
The 38th state ended up being Virginia in 2020. Now you might go, great, Equal Rights Amendment, here we go. The problem is Congress had specifically legislated in the beginning that the deadline was by 1982. Now you might say, well, who gave Congress the right to do that? Where's it saying in the Constitution that Congress gets to choose when the deadline is? I'd seen the Constitution anywhere that there's a deadline for congressional amendments. And this was an argument the Supreme Court held in other cases that you can have a deadline and the deadline counts. But either way, people kind of gave up on it at the time. All right, let's not forget
in
that
2020.
in 2020.
Yes.
But they said, you know what, this is 38 years later. Like, we've moved on now.
I mean, to Joe Biden, that's the blink of an eye. But
Sure. Well, the problem is it's not about Joe Biden. It's about the National Archives, who are the people who published these amendments in the Constitution, and they held that it was not a legit passing of the amendment. And they weren't the only ones. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It was the Equal Rights Amendment was one of the things that made her famous. It was one of the things that she was pushing really hard in the 70s. In 2020, just before she died, she said, maybe it's time to start again. Like, she gave up on the push as well and said, let's start again. The process is broken down, right? So she gave up on it as well. Everyone gave up on it, seemingly. The archivist, Colleen Shogan, has held since then several times that the ERA is not eligible. It's expired, and it cannot be the 20th Amendment as written right now. But then, 4 years later, 3 days before Joe Biden is no longer president, he tweets out this picture. The Equal Rights Amendment is now the law of the land, Lockie. It's the law of the land.
we made it in.
We made it.
Buzzer beater.
We made it. Just at the end there. And if you thought it was that's a typo. That can't be real. He got up there and he spoke about it. Watch him.
I affirm the Equal Rights Amendment to have cleared all the necessary hurdles to be added to the U.S. Constitution now. The Equal Rights Amendment is the law of the land now. It's the 28th Amendment to the Constitution now.
It's the law of the land now, Lockie. It's in the Constitution now. It's the 20th Amendment now. You might ask yourself, if that has just been in the Constitution all along since Virginia in 2020, why did no one mention that for the last 4 years? Especially Joe Biden. Why didn't he mention it sometime in the last 4 years? If Joe Biden now says, hey, it happened. It happened in 2020, guys. Why is this the first time he mentioned it? 3 days before he's no longer president. Seems strange, doesn't it?
That is extremely strange.
You think it might have come up.
I'm hoping you have an answer as to why, or a hypothesis.
I have no hypothesis as to why. Okay, yes, I do. Then my hypothesis is that's complete bullshit. That's my hypothesis. That's why.
Always the optimist.
Yes. I should say the archivist, she hasn't changed her mind. She's still saying, no. And she's the one who publishes the amendments. She says, no, we're not publishing that amendment, right? The strange thing is that Biden didn't even say that he was ordering the archivist to publish it. He just said, in my view, it's been passed. It's just his opinion. In case you're wondering, that's what he reckons. That's what he reckons.
Was he using those special presidential powers that Trump used to declassify documents with his mind?
Maybe
you
he
can
was.
just pass things with your mind?
Maybe he was, but at least Trump was trying to declassify. In this case, Biden wasn't trying to do anything. He was just saying, just in case you're wondering, I believe that it's passed.
By the way.
Yeah. So he didn't even try to order the archivist to publish it. He just said, no, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
I just think she should publish it, but I'm not going to tell her to. It's the Constitution. That's how it is now. This led to some strange reactions, Lockie. First of all, Kamala Harris jumped on board with the Equal Rights Amendment. It's the 20th Amendment, and it's the law of the land. They like that. It's the law of the land. Feminist advocate Kate Kelly tweeted out, I'm seeing a lot of confusion about the Equal Rights Amendment online. I wonder why. I've been working on the ERA for 13 years and literally wrote a book about it. So let me help answer some questions. 1, yes, it really is a real amendment and fully part of the US Constitution. Full stop.
That was my first question.
Well, she answered that. The archivist has no constitutional or legal role in the amending process. She does not get to decide what is or is not in the US Constitution. Her boss, the President of the United States, has spoken for his administration. That's it. The ERA is in. This is a victory. Kirsten Gillibrand, Senator for New York, she also jumped in there and said, President Biden's just declared that the Equal Rights Amendment is now a valid part of the Constitution and should be considered the law of the land. Now, women living in states with restrictions on their reproduction freedoms can and should file suits to overturn these unconstitutional laws that discriminate on the basis of sex, which is really what this is about. They're trying to get around Dobbs. That's why they did this.
Yeah.
So you might wonder, why would they do this? It's because they want to use the idea of sex discrimination to get around Dobbs and say that abortion restrictions are discriminations against women and therefore against the new 28th Amendment. That was their scheme, their cunning scheme. If Baldrick was a senator, this would be Baldrick's cunning plan on how to get around the Dobbs. Unfortunately, Alito kind of took care of this one because in Dobbs, he specifically said a state's regulation of abortion is not a sex-based classification. So he's already kind of said...
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, sorry, guys. If this was a constitutional amendment, it would overrule him. But, you know, he wrote that after apparently this was the 20th Amendment, according to Joe Biden. So he didn't care. Anyway, the weirdest thing about all this, it's just weird. To me, this whole thing is weird. I don't know what Joe Biden was doing. Like, why was he, like, I understand the logic of trying to get around Dobbs, but why didn't he push it harder? He was almost apologized for it.
And
It was
sitting on it for however long he did.
Yeah, it was just really, really piss weak effort. He didn't even try to bluff people. You know, it was just like kind of this, I'll give it a go. It was a bit like that. The thing that's weirdest about this is, do these people really feel like they know better than Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who spent 50 years trying to get this Equal Rights Amendment passed and then gave up? Do they reckon that it just didn't occur to her that it actually passed and she didn't realize it? How stupid do they think Ruth Bader Ginsburg was? I don't know. Anyway, that's how Joe Biden spent his weekend, doing that, which is a waste of time because Trump obviously is never going to mention it again, and neither will anyone else. I suspect even Kirsten Gillibrand, Kate Kelly, and Kamala Harris will never mention it again as well. Anyway, so that's the thing. Now, there's, as I said, there's TikTok we need to talk about, and there's the ceasefire in Gaza we need to talk about. I'll do that with Dave next week. Lucky you have manfully battled your way through the nods and odd comments. Your parents are going to be proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
You've represented the family well, the Hodson clan.
You're welcome, Mum and Dad.
Oh yeah, I got one more. One more. This is not what Biden did, but just it is kind of just a little coda about Biden. And what better time to do it than when he's no longer relevant? Mike Johnson told a story, the Speaker of the House told a story to Barry Weiss, a podcaster, which got a lot of coverage. This was this week. I wanted to back over it because Mike Johnson explained to Barry Weiss, essentially, how he knew that Biden wasn't all there as early as February 2024. I'm going to play you the whole clip that went viral. Hear his story. Think about what he's saying, and then I'll give you a bit more information.
In some ways, I actually kind of feel sorry for Joe Biden. I mean, he's in the twilight years of his life. He is not, obviously, has not been in charge for some time. He and I are standing awkwardly in the middle of the Oval Office, right over the rug by that coffee table. And I said, Mr. President, thanks for the moments. This is very important. I got some big national security things I need to talk to you about that I've heard, and I think you know, and what do we do? But first, real quickly, Mr. President, can I ask you a question? I cannot answer this from my constituents in Louisiana. Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me. I said, Mr. President, respectfully, could I go out here and ask your secretary to print it out? We'll read it together. You definitely did that. And he goes, oh, you talk about natural gas. Yes, sir. He said, no, you misunderstand. He said, what I did is I signed this thing we're gonna conduct a study on the effects of LNG. I said, no, you're not, sir. You paused it. I know. I have the export terminals in my state. I talked to those people this morning. This is doing massive damage to our economy, national security. It occurred to me, Barry, he was not lying to me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed. And I walked out of that meeting with fear and loathing because I thought, we're in serious trouble. Who is running the country? Like, I don't know who put the paper in front of him, but he didn't know.
Okay, now let me give you a little bit more context.
Thank you.
Because that sounds pretty convincing, that story. I don't think Mike Johnson's been mean. I think he's just telling the truth. Yeah, I think he genuinely believes that that was evidence that Joe Biden had lost his marbles. And it checks out, by the way. All the facts of the story check out.
Sure.
Biden did put a pause on approvals for liquefied natural gas, LNG, to Europe around January last year. This story is from February last year. Around January last year, he did put a pause on approvals for LNG exports. And that decision was particularly unpopular in Louisiana, like Mike Johnson said, because there was a massive LNG export terminal. And there was approval in the works there for the second stage of what they call the Calcasieu Pass in Louisiana. They were undoubtedly the ones that complained to Mike Johnson. So that all checks out as well. Also, at the time, many conservatives were using the exact arguments that Mike Johnson used there. That if we're not exporting LNG to Europe, they'll get it from Russia, which will fuel their war effort. That was the argument that was being used. All checks out. This pause, incredibly self-defeating. Here's the truth, though. Mike Johnson was 100% wrong when he told that story.
Oh.
Joe Biden was 100% right.
Whoa.
There was no pause on LNG exports. I spoke about this at the time and on PEP, and it was one of those stories that I covered because no one else does because people go, do I really want to talk about a pause on LNG exports? But that's right down my alley. And I talked about it at length. And if you go back, you can see what I told you about it at the time. The pause was of further approvals for future exports while a review of the process of LNG export approvals was taking place. So there was a study going on, and the study made sense because until then they were using a 5-year-old process put together under the Trump administration, which inadequately considered the effect of climate change on LNG. The effect of LNG exports on climate change. Yeah. So it was good to conduct another study and fix the numbers, essentially, right? Made sense. But importantly, while this study was going on, exports were continuing to Europe. Not just were exports continuing as per usual, they hadn't changed one bit. Literally, they didn't stop sending 1 milliliter to Europe, but all the exports that had already been approved for the future were also going to continue. Nothing was being paused that had already been agreed to. All that was being paused were things that hadn't already been approved. Let me tell you just what that means. America would not only remain the world's largest gas exporter, it would double its LNG capacity over the next 5 years. I don't know how long this study's meant to go for, but over the next 5 years, it would double its LNG export capacity. It had 7 functioning LNG export terminals at the beginning of 2024. It was about to have 5 more added to that had already been approved and were going to occur over the coming years. None of that was going to be affected by this study. If the study went for a year or 2 years, it would make zero difference. The question is, in 4 years' time, 5 years' time, 6 years' time, that's the question, okay? And that wasn't going to affect the Ukraine war in 2024. So Biden was right that they weren't cutting off LNG exports to Europe, like Mike Johnson said. And he was right that at that point in time, there was simply a study happening. Mike Johnson didn't understand the executive order, like many people didn't understand the executive. He wasn't the only one. I'm not saying he's an idiot. I'm saying that in particular, the right-wing media, the conservative media, was reporting it the way that Mike Johnson said. They were on Fox News. They were going, this is a ban, this is a pausing, this is going to destroy America's economy, this is going to help Russia out. Like they were spinning it. And Mike Johnson bought the spin. He clearly never looked at the actual executive order, which I did, which is why I talked about it. And I said at the time that people were misunderstanding it. So why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you this to, number one, show you as Biden walks out the door that the Biden going senile story is more complicated than it seems. And two, I want to show you that while cognitive decline is a problem, it's a serious problem. It isn't as big a cognitive problem as partisan bubble brain. And Mike Johnson, sadly, has a fatal case of that. So try not to contract partisan bubble brain out there, Peppers. It kills, and it makes a fool out of you on a viral clip, just like that one there. I think we've probably done enough, don't you, Lockie?
Oh, I'm happy to stay and nod for a bit more if you need.
Yeah, let's keep going. No. Look, I'm gonna leave a bit. I told you, I'm gonna leave you some stuff for Dave next week, but I'm also going to leave a bit for the first PEP, the Planet Extra podcast. I'm going to talk a little about the Supreme Court there. I'm going to talk about porn, because I know you're all wondering, when's he going to talk about porn again? Especially Lockie's parents. I know are wondering that. I'm going to talk a little bit about immigration, because I think it's going to be a big... You remember, Lockie, how I've spent the last, since you've been here, it's been 3 months, but 4 years before that as well, desperately trying to talk about immigration. And no one wants to talk about immigration with me. Well, you know what? I reckon we're going to talk about immigration a bit over the next 4 years.
This is the real reason you started PEP.
The immigration zone. I'm going to talk a little bit about that and a few other little things. I'm not going to go for too long, though, because I do have an hour and a half interview with Radley Balco, who is a civil libertarian reporter. He's got some really interesting stuff. I think you will like it. I hope you will like it. Even though I haven't done the Wildfires Part B yet. This is why we have PEP, okay?
Yes, brilliant. Okay, cool.
So it's going to be the Planet Extra podcast is not only going to have a whole bunch of stuff that we couldn't fit into this podcast. Please do go have a listen to or watch PEP. Tell me what you think of the format. Tell me what you think of combining an interview with, or a short PEP with extra stuff and correspondence and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to do correspondence because there is none yet, but I'll do the extra stuff. Tell me what you think of combining all that stuff together. Or would you prefer it all being in one episode like it used to be? And tell me also what you think about us releasing it at the same time, because Lockie and I were just arguing about it. Not arguing, we weren't even debating. We were just...
I wasn't allowed to have a stance.
Yeah. Lockie was just nodding at me, just like then. We're not sure whether to release them both at the same time, to release the PEP a day or two later, to release it 3 days later. They're like, just let us know what you think. And I will see you guys on, in the PEP, and then after that, next week. Till then, stay peppy.